Chapter 387. The weather in the far north was bone-chilling. When the snowstorm appeared, it sounded like the roars of the devils from hell. The army of the Dawn Army faced the snowstorm like a torrent of steel. They stepped on the snowy grassland that was full of potholes and killed their way towards the steel fortresses. The massive army of players was as powerful as the orcs of the same level after equipping their equipment. Previously, hundreds of players could not defeat one orc. Now, it was possible to defeat them in 3v1, 2v1, or even 1v1. Unless they were facing a boss orc with a powerful bloodline, the players would not be afraid of the orcs, who had low combat power. Hence, when the two armies clashed, the orcs, who had been fighting for a whole day, suffered heavy losses. When they were surrounded by the army of players, the orc army was one-sided. Many orc warriors were killed by the swords, battle energy, and magic. The orcs were not fools. Under the command of the legion leader, they quickly switched to a defensive formation. They tried to retreat while fighting. However, the players were also a little resentful. They had died 4 times just now, and the orcs had killed them like dogs. Now that it was time for revenge, how could they show mercy? They wielded their swords and slashed at the shield-bearers, or leaped up to kill the orcs at the back of the shield-bearers. Chu Liuqiu was no longer the commander. He led countless players and stepped on the heads of the shield-bearers and leaped up to kill the orcs at the back. He stabbed an orc's chest with his long sword in midair. He pulled out his sword. Hot blood splashed on his face. But he did not hesitate. He turned around and released his sword energy. In a strange posture, he slashed at the neck of an orc. The opponent held the sword in his neck with his left hand. His mouth was bleeding, but he still wanted to stab Chu Liuqiu. But Chu Liuqiu's hands pressed down with all his might, causing the opponent to retreat a few meters. Then, he kicked the opponent away. Stab! The orc covered his bleeding neck and fell heavily to the ground. He could not get up again. Hence 2 orcs, who were fatally injured, died in his hands. This was the way to fight on the battlefield, using the simplest method to hit the enemy's vitals, directly ending their lives. Because there were too many enemies on the battlefield, if they had to use skills for every move and fight the enemy head-on, for these intermediate professionals, sooner or later, their DO energy value would not be enough. Chu Liuqiu was accompanied by all the professional players of the City of Dawn. They could display their abilities and techniques on this battlefield. Xiao Ayan was a shield warrior. She was only an intermediate professional, but her epic-level suit could really make up for the difference in attributes between players and orcs. It could even suppress a small number of orcs. She rampaged through the orc army like a female Tyrannosaurus. Changli Jioga had already activated his dragon blood transformation when he charged into the beastman's battle formation. He was also wearing an epic set. Against this group of mid-tier beastmen, he could be said to be a ferocious beast with boundless strength. With 2 swords in his hands, he swept through the army. At least, when he was in his dragon blood transformation, very few beastmen of the same rank could stop him. Forever Alone also led the players of Golden Age on a killing spree. As professional players, all of them had intermediate epic sets. In a short period of time, they had created a bloody path for the player army. The strength of the Chosen Ones had suddenly increased. But the orcs did not only have to face them. They also had to face a large number of mages and countless rangers. Magic spells and arrows almost covered the entire sky. Not a single part of the battlefield was safe. There were casualties everywhere. But at this moment, in order to protect the large orc army, the commander of the orcs had no choice but to let his advanced orc legion charge into the battlefield. That was because every military fortress had an army of 3,000 high-ranked orcs within it. They were the real trump cards. They leaped down from the city walls. They were like death gods, unleashing their ultimate skills. Once again, the Chosen Ones were killed by the swords and died tragically in the snowy land. But this time, the players were ordered to revive on the spot. Instead of reviving at the commander flag, Some players might choose to revive at the commander flag because they were afraid of losing their equipment. But in this snowy land, the players' blood was boiling. There was no room for retreat in this war. The flag of the City of Dawn was raised high. Whether it was for the mission rewards or for the glory of the City of Dawn. More players would choose to revive on the spot and fight to the death. Although it was just a legion of advanced orc professionals, they were able to stop the player army in every military fortress. But with the sound of a horn, the cannons that had been aimed at the city walls fired at the same time. Kaboom! Almost at the same time, the 10 military fortresses were engulfed in the fireworks of the cannons. Many orcs standing on the city walls did not have time to react before they were reduced to ashes in the flames. Potholes kept appearing on the city walls. Arrow towers were overturned one after another. Many orc archers were engulfed in flames. If they did not die, they would jump down the city walls and burrow into the snowy land. It was a pity. They were killed by the countless spikes outside the city walls. They hung on the sharp spikes and spat out blood. Their eyes were filled with fear and helplessness as they were burned to death in the flames. It could not be helped. William had added some flammable kerosene to the core of the cannons. It was a very effective fire buff. Of course, the cannons did not cause any damage to the other parts of the battlefield. After all, the two armies were entangled. If the cannons were fired at the center of the battlefield, it would be mutually damaging, but the continuous bombardment of the cannons on the city walls was enough to make the fortresses, which did not have enough military supplies, very uncomfortable. The archers did not have the ability to retaliate. Just as the advanced Orc Legion was like a pack of wolves and sheep, the advanced legions of the City of Dawn also appeared. They were like shadows hidden in the dark. They were like tigers and wolves hiding in the sea of people. With a ferocious momentum, they resolutely attacked. High-tier humans, elves, and half-elves wearing full sets of dark golden armor charged into the army of high-tier orcs in an instant. They were superior in terms of equipment, combat power, and race. The advanced legions of the City of Dawn displayed an irresistible force. But the most dazzling thing was not the others. It was the Dragonblood Legion that William had painstakingly built. They wore dragon-scale armor and wielded weapons made of dragon teeth, dragon scales, and dragon bones. They were like butchers on the battlefield. In an instant, they destroyed the formation of the advanced Orc Legion. Because the weakest among them was an advanced, and their bloodline was at least advanced. All of them were equipped with epic equipment set. This was the strongest legion under William's command. It was also the strongest legion under the command of the human empires. A boss legion like the Dragon's Blood was one of the strongest legions no matter which continent it was on. When the Dragonblood Legion appeared on the battlefield, they used their transformation ability. Their golden eyes shone in the snowy night. They looked even more frightening than the orcs' eyes. The majority of the Beastman commanders were epic experts. As soon as they saw the Dragonblood Legion, they wanted to kill these fellows with limitless potential. But the epic elves also appeared in the center of the battlefield. His gaze met hers indifferently. When a dragon's blood warrior transformed, dragon scales would continuously grow under their skin. Even if someone managed to pierce through their dragon scale armor, it would be very difficult to pierce through the last layer of dragon scales. "Kill!" roared the Dragonblood Legion's leader. Hundreds of dragon speakers swung their left fists forward at the same time. Boom! Hundreds of colorful dragon breaths bloomed on the battlefield. This was a weakened draconic magic. However, when these draconic magic spells were combined, it was like a roaring fire dragon rampaging across the battlefield, turning countless enemies into ashes. When the high-rank beastmen saw the terrifying Dragonblood Legion, they immediately began to panic. Basically, he didn't have any intention of stopping them. However, the Dragonblood warriors didn't care about that. They were like killing gods, fiercely charging through the battlefield, leading their army to kill the Beastman warriors that had yet to return to the city. This was a one-sided battle. The advanced legions of the City of Dawn had 50,000 soldiers. They were located under 10 military fortresses, and they relied on their overall advantage to deal heavy blows to the orcs who had killed 4 million players. Did the 4 million players give up their lives and experience points? But they had killed so many orcs. Could it be that they couldn't level up? It was obvious. They couldn't even level up. The bloody battle lasted for half an hour. Each of the 10 orc fortresses had lost 1/3 of their soldiers. There were no more than 60,000 soldiers left in each stronghold. The defeated orcs had finally returned to the fortresses. However, just as they were about to close the city gate, the Grandmaster experts of the City of Dawn finally stepped onto the battlefield. There were hundreds of Grandmaster professionals. They charged towards the south gate of the 10 military fortresses. The advanced professionals of the City of Dawn also leaped onto the city walls, which had no defenses. William also chose a military fortress. Hence, countless players and the warriors of the City of Dawn saw a bolt of lightning descending from the sky. The bolt of lightning landed in front of the south gate. Countless orcs, who wanted to enter the city, were sent flying by the shockwave. Their bodies were covered with lightning bolts as they flew in all directions. "Close the city gates," an orc shouted. If those fellows couldn't return, so be it. The city gates had to be closed. An orc decisively cut off the chain that connected the city gate. Crack! Rumble! Everyone watched as the steel city gates were about to crash into the ground. A figure suddenly appeared below the city gates. He single-handedly held up the sinking city gates. The ground that his feet were rooted in was constantly cracking. However, William single-handedly held up the steel city gates that weighed tens of thousands of pounds. The position that William's left hand was holding up was constantly changing shape and melting, but the most important thing was, the prince in their eyes was being attacked by countless orcs, including some Grandmaster orcs. However, even though the man in front of them was being attacked, he didn't flinch. He just pointed his longsword at everyone and the countless orcs that were attacking him. He calmly said, "Have you had enough?" The orcs gulped, and even some Grandmaster orcs looked at him in horror. This guy in front of them, who was not even wearing any equipment, was simply a monster. He had suffered so many attacks, but he was still unscathed. William tilted his head. The moment his left hand released the city gate, he suddenly let out a loud shout. With an even faster speed, he hammered the bottom of the city gates from the bottom up. Bang! This steel gate, which was unknown how heavy it was forcibly smashed back. This deformed steel gate broke through the city wall and rushed into the sky. Finally, it flipped and fell into the inner city. Countless people witnessed this scene. They were in a daze. They didn't know what to say. William clenched his fists and softly said, "How about I give this fist a name? City Crusher." Chapter 388. From the moment William punched the city gate, like a tidal wave, countless players swarmed into the military fortress from both sides and fought with the orcs. This was a battle between swords and knives. This was a battle between races. This was also a battle of iron and blood. No one could retreat. In a few minutes, rows of orcs fell at the hands of the players. Large groups of players transformed into white light and revived. They fought with the orcs, until the orc corpses at the city gate piled up into a new wall, until the battlefield in the city was filled with blood. Countless broken limbs appeared before the players' eyes, feet, and even stuck to the city wall. Until the players could not advance. They were blocked by a group of advanced orcs who had returned to help. But even so, no one retreated. They charged forward with all their might. They prayed to inflict even a little damage on their enemies. Arrows streaked across the sky above their heads. The cannons behind them had stopped firing. In the current situation, they could only move forward, forward, and forward. At this moment, William wielded his long and narrow black sword. He pushed aside the players and came to the front. Over 100 high-grade orcs were ordered to defend the area, and they cut down groups of players under their feet. When 6 of them saw William approaching, They drew their swords and slashed at William's head with pitch-black sword radiance that was tens of meters long. William did not stop. He wielded his long sword and slashed horizontally. Swoosh! The long and narrow sword energy that flashed with lightning swept hundreds of meters ahead. The sword energy that was still in midair was split into two. The battle energy shields of 6 advanced orcs were instantly destroyed, and their corpses were split into two. But even so, this lightning sword chi was still not blocked. It carried a boundless murderous aura as it approached the other advanced orcs. At this moment, a pale orc with a black metal gauntlet appeared in front of the sword energy. He raised his hand, and a huge palm made of battle energy crushed the thunder sword energy. Meanwhile, there were also several Grandmaster-level orcs here. However, William glanced at them. He could not be bothered to fight with them. He also waved his hand, and several Grandmaster experts appeared behind him. When the pale orc with the black metal gauntlet saw this, he shouted, "Kill!" The Grandmaster orc behind him charged towards his opponent at this moment. They could tell from their eyes that the professionals of the City of Dawn were stronger. But they could not retreat. Because the military fortress had already fallen, their current goal was to stall for time so that the soldiers who could not participate in the battle would retreat and the capable soldiers would be in front. Because as long as he could hold on, the Black Great Wall would send reinforcements that were stronger and more ferocious. However, they had underestimated William's treatment of NPCs with high-level bloodlines and above. An epic equipment set, a legendary grade secret manual, and a legendary grade weapon of the same grade. One sentence. The City of Dawn would always run out of money. No matter how much money they earned, they would run out of money again. It was because he had sacrificed too much for the professions under him. However, this method of spending money like flowing water was also enough for him to build an incomparably powerful army. The advanced warriors of the City of Dawn had occupied the city walls and were advancing into the city. The Dawn army had various advantages. Even if the orc warriors could break the battle energy shields of the orcs, they could not break the armor on their bodies. The Dawn army could break the armor, but they had various army buffs and bloodline bonuses. They had unimaginable health points and defensive capabilities. Burned Cinder, Lautner, Diablo, Violent Dragon, and Old Leather led the rest of the Dawn army and killed their way through the military fortresses. When the Dawn army charged into the orc fortresses, it was like a pack of wolves charging into a flock of sheep. It was a one-sided battle. When William saw the orc Grandmaster of Combat charging towards him, he had no intention of holding back at all. If he acted tough on the battlefield, more of his soldiers would die. He dashed towards the pale orc at an even faster speed. Both of them collided with a loud bang. Shockwaves surged. The ground beneath William's feet sank. The Grandmaster orc hammered his fist on William's head, but it only made William's head tilt slightly. William's sword pierced through the orc's internal organs. Thunder and sword energy filled the orc's body, making it extremely difficult for him to breathe. Even his strength was weakened. The pale orc knew that he could not defeat William, but he still hammered William's head in an attempt to inflict more damage. However, the latter didn't seem to care about his inging fist, and continued to charge forward. The two of them were like a ray of rainbow light. They broke through the walls that were built with countless corpses. Fresh blood, corpses, skulls, arms, and legs flew into the sky when the rainbow light passed by. Then, along with the snowflakes, they smashed into the crowd. But William did not stop charging. He grabbed the orc in front of him with one hand, and his arms suddenly became thicker. Then, he threw the orc forward like he was throwing a spear. Bang! The pale orc landed heavily on the other side of the north gate with a loud bang. A few orcs who were escaping were smashed into meat paste. The rest of the orcs stared blankly at William, who had broken through the defense circle. They wanted someone to stop him, but the pale orc did not die. Even though he had suffered such a heavy blow, he still staggered and tried to stand up. But William was faster. He had already reached the back of the pale orc. He grabbed the orc's head and violently threw it again. Another row of orc cavalrymen were knocked over along with their wolf. The pale orc was embedded in the city wall. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. A mount wolf, which was several meters long, flipped itself over and rushed towards William recklessly. But it was still in midair. William punched. The head of the ice wolf was smashed into its abdomen. It did not even have the chance to howl. It died tragically in front of William. Many orc warriors with spears rushed over. They wanted to stop William from approaching the north gate. But William merely clenched his fist. Crackle! Dozens of lightning bolts descended from the clouds. The surrounding orcs were hit one after another. All of them twitched and fell to the ground. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. It could not be helped. William was an invincible professional of the same level. As long as it was not a legendary boss with extraordinary endowments, he could not stop William for more than a minute. And it was obvious. The Orc Empire was huge. But in such a military fortress, it seemed that such a being would not appear, whom Flay had just finished standing. A burly devil grandmaster warrior, who was about 2-3 meters tall, wore heavy armor and held 2 blood-red hammers wrapped in chains. He slowly walked in front of Flay. "Oh my God, let's go. It's the blood hammer of the devil race. I did not expect such a strong person to be hidden in our military fortress." Many orc soldiers could not help but gasp. In the Orc Empire, whether it was an epic grandmaster or an advanced professional, they all had a ranking. Among them, the Blood Hammerhand was one of the top 10 experts among the grandmaster rankers. It had to be known. The Orc Empire had a population of thousands. The Devil race also had a population of more than 3 million. The Devils were born warriors. Their bloodline was not weaker than that of the elves. It greatly increased the number of experts in the Orc Empire. So in this Orc Empire located in the extreme north, there were at least tens of thousands of Grandmaster professionals. And among these tens of thousands of Grandmaster experts, he was ranked in the top 5. Without a doubt, the strength of this blood hammer of the devil race could not be underestimated. When William discovered this guy, he raised his eyebrows. As expected, the Orc Empire did not intend to give up the 10 military fortresses immediately. They wanted to continue struggling. They had even secretly planted many experts in the military fortress. Their goal was to prevent the epic experts from being held back and the Grandmaster experts from being unstoppable. That way, the steel fortress would fall before the reinforcements could arrive. At this moment, the gates of the Great Ice Wall kept opening. An orc army that looked like a black dragon was rushing towards the 10 military fortresses in the bone-chilling wind and snow. The distance between the two sides was less than 20 kilometers. If the professionals ran at full speed, it would not take long for them to reach the fortress. This was the main reason why the military fortresses did not have teleportation portals. In other words, William had to take down the military fortresses within 30 minutes. If not, when the orc reinforcements arrived, all the advantages of victory would be gone. But, after William's vanguard army gained such an advantage, the elves were not idiots. Their cavalry had also rushed over and joined forces with the Dawn Cavalry and Griffin Legion to stop the reinforcements from arriving. But even so, compared to the endless stream of orc reinforcements, the elven reinforcements were far from enough. The Dawn army, which was split into 10 groups, could not completely occupy all 10 steel fortresses. But long before William had met this powerful Grandmaster professional, William had been very cautious. William had a plan. That was, if there was an accident, the City of Dawn would give up 5 of the steel fortresses. The troops would move to the nearest military fortress. They would attack together. This was a method that had no other choice. However, as the leader of the Dawn army, he had to know how strong and how many soldiers he had. Perhaps if they split into 10 groups, they could still achieve victory. But in the end, No matter how strong the individual strength of the Dawn army was, how many of them would be left? There were only a handful. The Dragonblood Legion could be annihilated, especially as the vanguard army. William's performance was outstanding. Out of the 10 strongholds, taking down 5 in a day was already a huge achievement. Was he going to give up everything in the City of Dawn for this bloody 10-year war? The achievement of taking down 5 fortresses was enough to shut the mouths of many people who looked down on him. There were losses and gains in war. In the eyes of many generals, the military fortresses that seemed to have been taken down were achievements that could not be given up. But William was not just a general. He was also a lord. He had also changed from a player to a native. As a lord, he used his authority to bring warriors from the southernmost part of the continent to the extreme north to fight a war that had nothing to do with them. However, he also had the right to try his best to bring this group of living warriors back in one piece. War is never won with one victory. I hope to minimize the losses. Even if I lose some achievement, it's better to have fewer casualties because you are loyal to me. I will repay your loyalty in the same way. William was a lord. He would not sacrifice his life for his loyal subordinates. However, he would try his best to do what a lord should do, which was to use equipment, secret manuals, potions, magical crystals, and most of the wealth he had obtained to make his warriors stronger. He hoped that they would sweat more on the training ground. He also hoped that they would not bleed on the battlefield. He was a person who cherished his life but was not too stingy. Those who treated him well. Those who treated him badly. Those who treated him badly. He would repay them 100-fold. He would repay them with kindness and enmity. Those enemies in his notebook would die sooner or later. None of them would be spared. Chapter 389. The war was not over. If the City of Dawn wanted to occupy the 5 fortresses, it would depend on whether the City of Dawn and the Elven cavalry could stop the Orc reinforcements. It would not take long. But at least the enemies in front of them had to be defeated so that the Orcs in the city would not have the upper hand. And it was obvious that William had also received the news. In each of these 10 fortresses, there was an extremely powerful Grandmaster expert. William believed that Burned Cinder and the others were very strong. In some cases, they were comparable to ordinary legendary bosses. But in the face of some professionals who had the potential of sages, they were still lacking. But it was not impossible to fight against 50% of the Orcs. William looked at the blood hammer in front of him. He brandished his sword with his right hand and hooked his middle finger with his left hand. The blood hammer did not get angry when he saw William's provocation. He stepped on his heavy armor and walked towards William, until the distance between them was less than 10 meters. The blood hammer suddenly stomped on the ground, and an exaggerated shock wave spread in all directions. Cracks appeared under William's feet, and sharp rocks kept stabbing at him. While the prince dodged, he resolutely rushed towards this extremely arrogant muscleman. Swish! The blood hammer swung his super-heavy hammer that was entwined with chains. With a roaring sonic boom, it swept towards William, who was in mid-air. William widened his eyes. He did not expect the blood hammer to be so fast. He used his sword of Hegni to block. Bang! When the two collided, the blade of the sword of Hegni was bent by the heavy hammer, and it let out a buzzing sound. When the heavy hammer bounced off, the blue stone under the blood hammer's feet suddenly exploded. The blood hammer shot towards William like a cannonball. He raised his other blood hammer high and smashed it down. At that moment, the air became stagnant. It was as if a mountain was about to smash his head. William quickly dodged to the side. When the heavy hammer smashed into the ground within a radius of 100 meters collapsed and sank by more than 3 inches. Many Orcs in the vicinity were reduced to a bloody pulp. Gravity! William also sucked in a breath of cold air. The instant he dodged, he felt his body become extremely heavy. If not for the fact that he won the judgment of strength, he might have been smashed in the face by the hammer. He had used insight before, but all he knew was that the person in front of him was a level 139 demon warrior with an innate dark attribute. However, the demon race's innate talent attribute was originally dark, which was very normal. However, the reason why the demon race was comparable to the elves was that they often had another kind of innate talent. At this moment, he finally understood that this guy's innate talent was gravity. Damn, you even have such a weird talent. William felt that he had met his match. It had to be known that there were many kinds of endowments in the world of gods, and they were ever-changing. There was never a fixed set of endowment. In the eyes of ordinary people, William's thunder endowment was considered a common endowment. For example, he was born with a handsome face. It was a rare talent that was 1 in a million. It was similar to the gravity talent in that they both had abilities beyond the imagination of ordinary people. It was just that one was good at fighting while the other was good at making friends. However, this was not the end. The blood hammer clenched its fist at William. Rumble. Countless rocks, corpses, swords, and armor on the ground smashed towards William from all directions. His Royal Highness the Prince retreated rapidly. As he knocked over the obstacles with his body, his thunderbolt finger burst with dazzling lightning. It broke through all obstacles and crashed into the chest of the blood hammer hand. It was a pity. The muscular tyrant did not dodge. He allowed the lightning, which was full of impact and penetrating power, to penetrate his chest armor and create a bloody hole in his body. But at this moment, he also swung the heavy hammer with the chain and smashed it towards the prince's head with a whistling sound. William raised his left hand of the god and brazenly blocked in front of him. While blocking the hammer, his body was instantly smashed into the ground, leaving only his head exposed. But the blood hammer did not have the chance to resist. At the same time, another hammer sliced through the air and swept across the ground. Damn, if I don't show my prowess, do you think I'm an orange cat? William's body instantly transformed into the body of Holy Thunder. He rushed out of the soil without any obstruction and charged towards the blood hammer like a bolt of lightning. The blood hammer did not expect William to have such a move. The blood hammer used countless gravitational forces, but his speed was still not restricted. He watched helplessly as the blood hammer arrived in front of him. At this moment, a violent slash with the power of thunder slashed down. Countless bolts of lightning bloomed in the sky. A thunder sword energy that was hundreds of meters long slashed heavily towards the blood hammer's head with the momentum of splitting mountains and splitting the earth. However, it was unimaginable. The blood hammer let go of the chained hammer. His hands were filled with bloody light as he grasped the sword energy that could kill a person. Even though the blood hammer was forced to kneel on one knee and the ground around him exploded, he still managed to block the sword energy. The blood hammer was not only powerful in his hammer, but also in his hands. It was a pity that after William used his skill, he revealed his true body from the body of Holy Thunder. The sword of Hegni in William's hand had reached the blood hammer's face. The murderous sword edge was about to pierce the blood hammer's forehead. A shock wave filled with gravitational forces suddenly spread out. William could not control himself and was sent flying away. The blood hammer slowly stood up. He touched his helmet that had been pierced by the sword energy and the few drops of blood on his forehead. Once again, he used gravitational forces to forcefully uproot the north gate. With a deafening roar, he smashed it towards William. William gritted his teeth and blasted the left hand of the thunder god. The steel gate was smashed away. However, the blood hammer hand seized this opportunity. At the same time, he swung the two heavy hammers that were wrapped in chains and smashed them towards William with a sonic boom. William, who had just smashed the steel gate, once again felt an unbearable gravitational force. But this time, he did not have the body of Holy Thunder. His power points could not be judged correctly every time. This time, he failed. He watched helplessly as the two hammers on his left and right closed in on him. He could not avoid them. He activated the defensive skill of the sacred shield of light. Dozens of sacred shields appeared and enveloped his entire body. However, under the influence of the huge force and gravitational forces, the two chained hammers exploded with unimaginable lethality and gravitational force. The sacred shield of light was like a thin piece of glass that did not obstruct William. William roared angrily and stretched out his arms. He chose to use his hands to block the two hammers. Bang! Crack, crack! Blood splattered from between the hammers. A badly mangled figure slowly fell to the ground. Under the immense pressure and gravitational force, his left hand of the Thunder God was unharmed. But his arm was smashed into pieces. His right arm was instantly turned into a pile of minced meat. William's entire body was flattened. He finally felt the crushing power of the Thunder God. It was an unstoppable crushing power. William had added points to his power and agility, respectively. If there were no accidents, the blood hammer only added points to his power. The muscular blood hammer did not care about the speed of others. In his gravitational field, he was a god. It could be said that a person with gravitational endowment basically possessed the epic realm in advance. His opponents not only had to dodge the two hammers that were entangled with magic chains, but they also had to fight against the gravitational field. It was hopeless. However, just when the blood hammer was about to completely kill William, his body emitted the light of life. In an instant, William's injuries had mostly recovered. From the start of the battle until now, it had only been 1 minute. William's resurrection armor was gone. If not for his thick skin and many defensive endowments, he would have been KO'd. When the two of them looked at each other again, they felt that their opponent was a little troublesome. One was worried that the blood hammer could resurrect continuously. The other was considering how to kill him. Meanwhile, at the north of the 10 military fortresses, 5 groups of cavalrymen, each of which had nearly 10,000 soldiers, finally arrived. The vanguard of the orc reinforcements had arrived. There were not too many of them. They were also orc cavalrymen. They were the Mount Wolf cavalrymen of the Orc Empire. Each of them was riding on a long, wide, armored Mount Wolf. Advanced versus advanced. Heavy cavalry versus heavy cavalry. In this situation, advanced professionals would be easily shot to death if they flew. Hence, the advanced professionals did not fight in the sky. Instead, they fought on the ground. There was no doubt about it. The cavalry of the Orc Empire was not weak. In particular, the Mount Wolves had advantages that the Dragon's Blood warhorses did not. Their mouths were sharper, and their movements were more agile. When the Mount Wolves charged, they were not as fast as the Dragon's Blood warhorses. They needed to have explosive power. However, if the two armies were to engage in battle, the ones who would suffer heavy casualties would definitely be the warhorses and cavalry. Christian was the former Legion commander of the Fearless Legion. He was also the half-elf lord who had defected to William. He rode on his warhorse and looked at the Mount Wolf cavalrymen who had just stopped and were gradually approaching. He silently grasped his weapon. Ever since the establishment of the Dawn Cavalry Legion, they had not fought head-on battles. It was not that they could not fight. It was that they did not want to fight. Their Royal Highness had never been willing to use such a costly method to win the war. But the Dawn Cavalry Legion had fought tough battles before. When they faced the attacks of countless dark creatures, the Dawn Cavalry had fought a bloody path and left behind a group of enemies who had been defeated by the infantry. But now there was no other way. The City of Dawn had a total of 6 cavalry legions. They were defending the north of the 2 military fortresses to prevent the reinforcements from arriving. They had won. This meant that the mission of seizing the fortresses was safe. They had lost. It was very likely that the possibility of the Lord capturing 10 fortresses would be reduced to 4 or 3. If the elfin cavalrymen also lost, William would not be able to get a single fortress. So they had to win this battle. They could not lose. Now, he was leading 2 heavy cavalry legions with thunder warhorses and 1 light cavalry legion with thunder warhorses. Christian waved his hand, and the 3,000 light cavalrymen split into 2. They split from the left and right wings and formed an arc as they charged towards the orc heavy cavalry. Every member of the light cavalry was an elfin ranger. They were natural archers. Not only were they strong, but their shooting speed and accuracy were also outstanding. On the other hand, the 3 heavy cavalry legions didn't waver in the face of these arrows. No matter how many beastmen fell from their mounts or how many mount wolves fell to the ground, they wouldn't split up their troops to chase after the light cavalry that ran faster. The Orc Legion only had one goal: to kill their way into the city. To kill the Dawn cavalry in front of them. If they hid, then they would continue to charge forward. If they did not hide, then they would let this group of elves from the south experience the wolf cavalry of the far north. Roar! When the 2 armies were less than 3,000 meters apart, the howls of the wolves shook the earth. Christian took a deep breath. He clamped his horse's abdomen with both legs and led the charge. The next second, rows of cavalrymen followed closely behind. The 2 heavy cavalry legions of the Dawn cavalry formed a wedge formation. They sped up, but the formation did not disperse. Until this moment. Throw! An order was given. All the cavalrymen, a total of 6,000 heavy cavalrymen, filled their enchanted short spears with battle energy and threw them far away with inertia. At that moment, the sky was filled with colorful short spears formed a spear formation. With a dazzling light, they instantly arrived above the heads of the Orc heavy cavalry. Activate your battle energy. The Orc Legion commander looked at the tens of thousands of short spears in the sky. They were all made of magical metal. He was infuriated by the rich. Comparisons were odious indeed. The orcs were crazier than the elves. But there was no other way. He could only rely on his cavalry to resist. However, the 6,000 short spears made of magical metal pierced into the orc army with an unstoppable momentum. In an instant, the orcs and wargs suffered terrible casualties. Almost 1,000 orcs and wargs died tragically under this rain of spears. Many of them were nailed to the ground by the short spears. More of them fell to the ground because they were seriously injured. They were then killed by the orc heavy cavalry. In a word, the power of the short spears, even if they formed a spear formation due to the resonance of battle energy, was far from being that powerful. After all, a group of high-level orcs could effectively block a lot of the spears in terms of HP, equipment, and battle energy shields. But there was a more important point. The purpose of the spears was not to kill them. It was to let them fall from their mounts. They would not be able to dodge in time and would be hit by their allies behind them. After all, a warg that weighed more than 1,000 kilograms was already wearing armor. Coupled with the weight of the orcs, the force of the charge was far beyond what an ordinary high-level orc could withstand. And then, a situation that made the orcs even more desperate appeared. Under this wave of spears, a griffin legion of 3,000 suddenly appeared in the sky. Another wave of spears rained down from the sky. This orc heavy cavalry of 9,000 men suffered unimaginable damage again. Then, it was the unstoppable rain of battle chi arrows that came one after another. When the cavalry of both sides collided with each other, the formation of the orc heavy cavalry was already showing signs of chaos. But the wargs still had the advantage in numbers. In close combat, the wargs were clearly superior. But, the moment the two sides were about to collide, a total of 6,000 thunder warhorses, the horns on their heads released dazzling lightning at the same time. When the countless bolts of lightning converged together, a bolt of lightning that pierced thousands of meters straight through the orc cavalry army. At that moment, the orc army's formation was completely torn apart. Thousands of orcs and their mounts were electrocuted. Those who weren't in the center of the lightning also had arcs of electricity jumping on their bodies. This even angered the mount wolves, and they forcefully threw their masters off. Kill! Only then did Christian give the order. Only then did the two waves of white and black collide with each other. Chapter 390. After the cavalry came the infantry, and after the infantry came the horseless ones. Ahem, the horseless ones were definitely not the cavalry. The scene returned to the fortress. William looked deeply at Bloodhammer. This muscular man did not like to talk, but it was undeniable that he was not very smart. It was a wrong tactic to fight head-on with him. Hence, William slowly put away the sword of Hex. He decided to use his trump card. At that moment, lightning flashed and thunder roared. Dark clouds rolled. Bloodhammer's eyebrows, which were hidden under his mask, twitched. He was very happy, but his eyes flashed with disbelief. The berserker in front of him had taken out a bow and arrow. Sigh, sigh, sigh. Did a thunder berserker know how to use a bow? Put it down. Such a good bow should be used by someone who knew how to use it. Come on, brother, let's fight head-on at close range. That's a real man's way of fighting. But His Royal Highness, who was stroking the legendary lightning bow, ignored him. The entire lightning bow was made of crystal-clear thunderstones, and the bowstring was also made of thunder-type beast tendons. It was precisely because the bow was too gorgeous and dazzling that William didn't dare to show it to others. This bow. Good. Very good. As for how good it was good enough as long as it was better than an epic bow. William remembered his original occupation. He was a ranger. Therefore, he raised his middle finger again and hooked it in high spirit. Bloodhammer's expression did not change. He wanted to know what the guy in front of him wanted to do. But William hooked his middle finger again. He hooked his middle finger again. An electric current roared out again. This time, Bloodhammer was furious. William had gone too far and insulted the devil race. Did William think that he did not know what William's gesture meant? He had just taken a step forward, but William was faster. Before he could move, William suddenly retreated and drew the lightning bow. He shot a fatal arrow. 3 arrows were shot at the same time. A visible gravitational force appeared. But the arrows that were condensed with thunder battle energy were too fast. They fell a little, but they still hit Bloodhammer's chest. Pom, pom, pom. There were 3 consecutive explosions. It forced him to take 3 steps back. The muscular tyrant was unwilling to give up. He charged at William like a rhinoceros and continuously used his gravitational field, causing the ground within a radius of 100 meters to collapse. The city was distorted and the buildings collapsed. He also swung the heavy hammer that was connected to the chain at William. But William widened the distance between them. He had discovered a problem long ago. This silly girl's magic chain could only reach a maximum of 150 meters. It was enough for a melee fighter, but for a Grandmaster Ranger, this distance was simply negative. William retreated all the way to the edge of the city wall. When he had nowhere else to retreat, he leaped onto the northern city wall. He turned around and punched a few orcs who wanted to sneak up on him, sending them flying. Then, he turned around and drew his bow again. 9 consecutive arrows. So. An ear-piercing sound of something tearing through the air could be heard. 9 bolts of lightning shot out, shining brightly in the dark night. Bloodhammer's hand swung his iron chain hammer to block them. After blocking 3 of the arrows, the remaining 6 hit its huge body. For a moment, Bloodhammer was furious. Why was its body so strong? It was just like a living target. But he also felt that William's shooting was very accurate. Every shot was aimed at its vital parts. If William continued to shoot a few hundred times, even if Bloodhammer was able to withstand the attacks, he would be shot down. Perhaps this weirdo would even attack its corpse. Hence, the Iron Fool hesitated for a while and gave up chasing. He turned to look at the city and shouted at the epic veteran who was in a stalemate. Then, he dashed out of the northern city gate and escaped. William was dumbfounded. Gosh, where were the devils that loved to fight? Were they all so cowardly now? But William did not dare to let Bloodhammer leave just like that. He was afraid that this monster would rush into the cavalry of the City of Dawn. Then, no one would be able to stop it. Then, William rose from the ground. With the momentum of a thunderbolt, he chased after Bloodhammer, who was not very fast, and fiercely shot at him. So. Pom. The Grandmaster Devil Expert, who was about 2-3 meters tall, was shot down by William's arrows regardless of whether he was running on the ground or flying in the sky. 3 to 5 minutes passed. Dozens of arrows were stuck in his buttocks. When William saw this scene, he felt somewhat helpless. Every time, he aimed at Bloodhammer's head or skull. Unfortunately, Bloodhammer's gravitational field would always be effective, and the arrows would hit his buttocks. This was the main reason why Bloodhammer's buttocks were damaged. William chased after Bloodhammer and shot wildly all the way until he arrived at the battlefield where two groups of heavy cavalry were fighting. The two of them crossed the battlefield, but William did not stop his killing intent. But the two of them crossed the battlefield arrogantly. The battlefield became somewhat quiet. Some elves and orcs who were fighting could not help but turn their heads to take a few more glances. The elves were less curious, so they did not watch much. So, they seized the opportunity to kill. Thud! Hundreds of curious and even surprised orcs were beaten up by the elves again. When the orc heavy cavalry saw the legendary Bloodhammer being chased by the orcs, they knew that the city was not far from falling. The epic veteran was only there to hold the fort. Unless the Orc Empire was in a complete crisis, they would not take action. They had just suffered various attacks from the Thunder Heavy Cavalry. More than half of the 9,000 wolf riders had perished. In this situation where their morale was low, even if they charged into the military fortress, they would not be of much use. As for making use of the cavalry's advantage to charge into the Dawn army outside the city, it was really useless, because there were too many chosen ones who had been resurrected. If only 4,000 wolf riders charged in, they would probably only cause a small commotion. If the chosen ones were to delay the Dawn army until the advanced professionals of the Dawn army arrived, they would definitely die. After hesitating, the Orc Empire's wolf riders chose to retreat. When Christian saw that they were trying to escape, he naturally had to beat them when they were down. He did not have to chase too far. 10 kilometers. Just 10 kilometers. Obviously, the Bloodhammer and William were even faster. The two Grandmasters streaked across the sky and rapidly flew towards the Black Great Wall. At the same time, rays of light continuously hit the Bloodhammer's buttocks, back, heels, thighs, anyway. His back was basically full of arrows. It was a pity that his skin was extraordinarily thick. In addition, the two of them were flying in the same direction, so the strength of William's arrows was much weaker and could not cause serious damage. Until the two of them saw the Black Great Wall in front of them. The Bloodhammer hand suddenly stopped and turned his head around. Bang! There was a crisp sound. It hit him right between his eyebrows. This muscular demon race tyrant gritted his teeth and pulled out the arrow on his head. Panting like an ox, he spat out these words. Come on. Come and kill me if you can. At that moment, the world seemed to have quietened down. William swallowed his saliva. He looked at the muscular devil in disbelief. This B******'*'''''*'''*'''''''''''''''''''*' was like a whining monster. Was this a lowly's voice? The voice was so perverted. Why did God give you such a huge body and such a girly voice? Do you think you are Neza? In the next moment, the Bloodhammer did not speak, but he was even more furious. He saw William's astonished, incredulous, frightened, sad, and pitiful eyes. Of course, William wanted to explain. I'm not. Don't spout nonsense. My eyes are not that complicated. I just feel like laughing, but before the two of them could fight. On top of the Black Great Wall that was more than 50 meters tall, a few figures suddenly rushed over. The prince did not hesitate. He turned and ran. It was because he had changed his eyes of thunder. He saw a bald orc on the wall. He was surrounded by a group of arrogant warriors. He looked like a big boss. He should not be a big boss. Perhaps he was a prince of the Orc Empire, after all. Even if he was not handsome, he should be burly. He could not be a 1-4-meter dwarf. Not only was he shorter than a dwarf, but he did not have much hair. He did not look like a cow-skinned orc. It had to be said. That fellow was the ugliest he had ever seen among all the beastmen. In particular, he was shamelessly combing the hairs on the top of his head. Tisk tsk. Even I can't do such a shameless thing. William muttered in his heart. Then he flew away. At this moment, the bald orc on the city wall was also looking at William, who was flying into the distance. T kept his dragon bone comb in a small box and kept it in his space ring. He could not help but ask, "Who is that person?" "Your Majesty, that person is the Lord of the City of Dawn, the Prince of the Blackleaf Elves. His name is William Blackleaf. He is the vanguard of today's battle." T nodded in realization. "He's an elf from the south. Didn't he freeze to death when he came to the extreme north? How did he chase him all the way here?" In the next second, he snapped his fingers. The crisp sound reverberated in the sky. A tornado formed by ice and snow engulfed a radius of tens of thousands of meters. The ground was torn apart and trees were uprooted. The tornado whistled in front of William. Or rather, the ice and snow tornado was about to engulf William. William felt the extreme coldness. When he was about to be frozen, he was dumbfounded. What was this? How could he use a forbidden spell to scare him? Just as he crushed the random teleportation scroll, another crisp sound reverberated. The ice and snow tornado quickly disappeared. William did not dare to think too much. He swallowed his saliva and transformed into a bolt of lightning, disappearing into the horizon. Meanwhile, a voice traveled into the ears of the experts on the Great Wall. "Have some shame. If you kill him, I'll kill 100 grandmasters of the Orc Empire." T sneered. "Come, let's fight in close combat. I, the icebound sword sage, am not afraid of anyone." Crack! A crack appeared on the Great Wall beneath his feet. The Great Wall, which had not been damaged for thousands of years, cracked at this moment. T raised his hand to stop the furious subordinates beside him. They looked as if they were going to fight to the death, but in fact they could not wait to return home. He grinned and said, "If the sages don't attack, then so be it. Why use weapons? I was just testing to see if you were around. Get lost. I've never seen such an ugly orc. D*MN, B*TCH. You're shameless." T was enraged. But no matter how loud he shouted, there was no response. He took a few deep breaths and turned to look at his subordinate. "Don't let them gain a firm foothold. Continue sending troops tomorrow and fight them in the wilderness on the snowfield. If they want to reach the Great Wall, delay them for 2 years." "Yes, Your Majesty," the legendary experts replied in unison. Chapter 391. The battle lasted for more than 20 hours until the next morning. As the sun rose, the golden sunlight shone on the land. The flags of the City of Dawn were erected on the military fortresses. Blood and snow, knives and swords, cannon fire, rocks, and blood flowed like a river on the battlefield. Specks of blood filled the snowy plains, like a beautiful painting that had been partially destroyed by fire. The 10 military fortresses that the City of Dawn had attacked were all emitting black smoke. However, the flags of the City of Dawn had been erected in 5 of the fortresses. They were fluttering in the wind. When the players saw the flags of the City of Dawn, most of them sat on the ground. They were too lazy to move. It's too tiring. Mentally. That's right. This kind of continuous attack is too perverse. Even if I have strength, I can't find the accuracy of my attack. Let's go. I'll go offline and sleep first. Many players who had not died more than 6 times also went offline. After all, this war did not give them any rest. It was too tiring. The players were too lazy to care about the missions that William was giving out. Experience was important, but their livers and lives were also important. However, there were 1.8 million players in the City of Dawn. There were 100,000 Liver Kings. These people were still accepting various missions. If they did not play until they were mentally weak or forced to go offline, they would not take the initiative to rest. William sat at the top of the city wall and looked at the corpses of the soldiers that had piled up. He took a deep breath and knocked his head against the wall. His eyes looked at the sky that was devoid of snow and dark clouds. At this moment, his personal guard, Knox, staggered over. He said in a deep voice, "Your Highness, the battle casualties have been calculated. The infantry corps had lost 2,145 high-grade professionals and 15,390 middle-grade professionals. The 6 cavalry legions have lost 4,302 men. The Dragonblood Legion has lost 89 men. There are 8,540 who are seriously injured and unable to fight anymore." 21926? William muttered to himself. This death rate did not exceed his calculations, but he could not help but sigh when a quarter of the 100,000 soldiers he had brought from the City of Dawn had died in a single night. Especially the 8,540 who were seriously injured. In this magical era, what was considered a serious injury? Losing an arm or a leg was considered a serious injury. Moreover, this was the kind that lost their limbs and could never be found again. In fact, as long as they still had their own limbs, they could find some magisters and use a secret technique to connect their bodies together. However, the prince glanced at Knox. "Let those heavily injured warriors return to the City of Dawn to recuperate. Tell them what I promised them. I promised to regrow their limbs." "Yes." Knox nodded but did not leave. He suddenly bit his lips and continued, "Norton died in battle." When William heard this news, he was in a daze. Norton, his bodyguard. Guards guarding the door for him. These were the bodyguards that the prince would see every day when he got up and went out. They were also the bodyguards that usually followed behind him. He was a serious man, but he was loyal and devoted to his bodyguard. William stood up and patted Norton's shoulder. "I remember. He's your brother?" "Yes, Your Highness." Knox nodded. "This ring is for you. Bring all the corpses of the warriors of the City of Dawn home. This place is cold, and they are not used to living here." William struggled to stand up. He turned around and slowly left. Knox bowed and turned to leave. It was inevitable for a general to die in battle. As long as the war continued, very few people could survive to the end. Knox and Norton were brothers. This was very rare among the pure-blooded elves. He did not know how sad Knox would be. But the dead could not be resurrected. The past had to be in the past. Was William sad? He was all right. He rubbed his nose and placed his hands on the cold wall. He looked calmly at the Orc Empire in the north. Sparks appeared in his pupils. He narrowed his eyes and looked across space. He could see the black Great Wall that was 20 kilometers away. There were many archer towers. There were many cannons. There were many orc warriors, trolls, giant beasts, and even controlled behemoths and frost giants. "I won't attack this Great Wall again." William sighed. He insisted on being the vanguard and taking down the 5 military fortresses first. Actually, there was another reason. He wanted to use the absolute number of battle achievements to prevent his soldiers from attacking the Black Great Wall that had caused the deaths of millions of elves. He had not participated in this mission before, but he still knew how to avoid greater risk. In the future, the legions of the Orc Empire would continue to be deployed, as long as the elves did not take down all the fortresses. In that case, bloody battles would break out again and again between the 18 fortresses and the northern snow prairie. As the Lord, he did not want his soldiers to die at the Black Great Wall. He could only obtain enough battle achievements in other battlefields to shut the mouths of certain people. to prevent certain people from targeting him and making him lead the other warriors to die at the Black Great Wall. His battlefields, they were the fortresses. They were the snowy plains within 20 kilometers. He wanted his Dragonblood Legion and cavalry to fight with the Orc Legion in the wild. He wanted to obtain the Legion buff that allowed him to win every battle. Not the Black Great Wall that was like a natural moat. He was being opportunistic, but as long as he was human, he would be selfish. He was not a human. He was a half-elf. He should be more selfish. It was almost noon. The alliance of the three races sent 50,000 soldiers to each of the 5 fortresses to guard these 5 hard-won fortresses. They were not taking credit. They just had to stabilize the situation. Now, no one could take away His Royal Highness's credit. The commander of the 3 races, Charlie Reeve, who was a legendary warrior of the Snow Elves, came to the front lines to visit him. Charlie Reeve was very famous. William had not met him in his previous life, but he had heard of him. He was a legendary commander of the Snow Elves and a fire element professional. He had a domineering sword technique called Prairie Fire. He had a record of killing 2 legendary experts of the same level. It was important to know. As long as a legendary expert did not have a death wish, it was difficult for him to die. If a legendary expert wanted to kill an expert of the same level, he had to have unimaginable talent and power. If there were no accidents. When Charlie Reeve was young, he was a genius who had the potential of a sage. In a temporary tent at the military fortress, William pretended to lie on the bed. He had a constipated expression, as if he had suffered serious injuries. When he saw Charlie Reeve, he stood up and coughed out a mouthful of blood. There's no need to get up. Prince William has made a great contribution. Since you have suffered such serious injuries, you should rest more. After seeing you, I understand that the future of the elves depends on you young people. Charlie Reeve used his eyes to signal the young men and women beside him to learn from William. William glanced at them, and his eyes lit up. He almost could not hold back the sparks that were about to jump out. These people were not simple. All of them had legendary bloodlines and were at the Grandmaster level. They were the top young experts of the 3 races, and some of them had the potential of a sage. What was more important was, they were not only the young and strong of the 3 races, but they were also the future pillars of the elves. William used his insight. TSK. They were all future leaders. Not only were they the kind of people who held great power, but their personal strength was also quite strong. William was a prince who did not integrate with the elves. It was very difficult to meet an elven expert of the same level. There were rumors that even though the World Tree had been destroyed, the 3 elven tribes of the legendary continent still controlled the damaged space of the World Tree. That was the training ground for the elves to nurture their top geniuses. Otherwise, if the geniuses of the elves were like Prince Alan, who was killed by William, who only had legendary bloodline and had the same combat power as Trash, then there would really be no hope. William noticed that the expressions of these people were somewhat arrogant. But in the face of real battle achievements, most of them showed some respect. Naturally, His Royal Highness was not the kind of person who was arrogant. He coughed out blood and stood up. His face was pale as he smiled. Commander Charlie Reeve, you're being too serious. We're all of the same age. Many of my brothers and sisters are more outstanding than me. I'm the one learning from them. It's not my turn to learn from you. When I saw all of you, I knew that with you, the elves would definitely defeat the Orc Empire. He used the group befriending skill. William's pitiful appearance and handsome face instantly garnered a lot of favorable impression points. Many people laughed and said, "You're too kind. We're all geniuses of the elven race. Prince William fought beautifully in this battle. We can't even catch up to you." That's right. Our individual strength is not bad. But we need to learn from Prince William in terms of commanding troop. Praising each other, regardless of the era or the background, As long as there were intelligent races, there would definitely be such people. The legendary Charlie Reeve looked at William with gratification. Very good. If all the elves were like this, their future would be limitless. It would not be a dream for them to return to the bustling center of the continent. But it was a pity. William was not a snow elf. He raised his eyebrows thoughtfully and said, "It's good to be humble, but no one can erase your ability to lead troops into battle and the achievements you've made in just one day. All right, I won't stay any longer. You youngsters can chat more." Charlie Reeve smiled and turned to leave. William and the others watched the legendary Charlie leave. The tens of people in the tent looked at each other. They did not know what to say. William used the group befriending skill again. He smiled and said, "Everyone has braved the snowstorm to come here. The celebration banquet has not started yet. Why don't we have a drink?" "Prince William, you're too kind. I didn't expect to be able to attend the celebration banquet. I've heard that there are many good things in the City of Dawn. I wonder what we can eat." One would not slap a smiling face. With William's current identity, status, and background, even if he had half-elven blood, no one would reject the befriending skill. After the group befriending skill banquet ended, William looked at the mission information that popped up. His heart was thumping wildly. He had made a killing. Chapter 392. Prompt: You have completed the S-level mission of Dawn Vanguard Mission Introduction. In this era of the rise and fall of the elves, you will be the vanguard army of the elves. Within 20 days, you will occupy 2 orc military fortresses or kill 200,000 orcs. Prompt: You have sacrificed the lives of 4 million chosen ones in one night. Within 24 hours, you have completely occupied 5 military fortresses of the Orc Empire and killed 650,000 enemies. Your name will spread throughout the legendary continent. Prompt: Your completion rate for this S-level mission is 300%. Prompt: You have obtained 5 million experience as a reward. Prompt: You have obtained 32 million achievement points as a reward. Prompt: You have obtained 2 legendary points, only available in the legendary continent. Prompt: Your achievement points can be exchanged for the desired rewards on the battle achievement table. Prompt: Blackleaf Elves, Moonlight Elves, and Snow Elves affinity with the camp increased by 3,300 points. Prompt: You have obtained the information of the unactivated Legendary Lord mission. Obviously, this seemingly ordinary S-level Vanguard mission had a lot of room for maneuvering and an unimaginable reward. Because this Vanguard mission was also an important side mission of the SS-level Super main storyline mission. And in a war, time was money and rewards. The Dawn Army was the Vanguard Army. Under the circumstances of sacrificing a small number of cavalry, they had first occupied 5 fortresses of the Orc Empire and killed 650,000 orcs in one day. It had to be said that this was definitely a very worthwhile mission. Of course, the Vanguard Army had achieved victory in the beginning. They had reduced the set mission target of 20 days to 1 day. They had even exceeded the target. This was also the key reason why this mission reward was so exaggerated. William did not care about the experience points that were only enough for him to level up by 1 level. His current target was his legendary point. This mission had increased his legendary points by a total of 2 points. The key was that he was facing an Orc Empire that did not pay much attention to him, and he was just the Lord of the City of Dawn. This was akin to the militia in the countryside using farming tools to defeat the armored knights of the Empire who were riding on warhorses. It was simply inconceivable. But no matter what, these 2 legendary points would eventually make William more dazzling in the legendary continent. It was just that the name with 2 legendary points gave the prince a slight headache. Dawn Executioner, legendary point +2 restriction. This legendary status is only effective on the legendary continent. Description: The Lord of the City of Dawn, William Blackleaf. As the vanguard of the elven race in the legendary continent, He sacrificed millions of chosen ones to occupy 5 of the 18 fortresses of the Orc Empire in one night. A description: according to the records of the Frost Empire's scribe, after they were blinded, these chosen ones who could resurrect from the dead had died more than 5 million times. Description: the chosen ones are like a group of undead army with no visible corpses. They keep returning to the battlefield and charging towards the Orc fortress in a frenzy. They keep losing their lives until they can no longer be resurrected. Description: the Lord of the City of Dawn is cold and ruthless. He has great control over the chosen ones. Many people tremble in fear. No matter what. From the point of view of others, William, the Lord of the City of Dawn, was famous on the continent. The main reason was that William had caused the deaths of the players 5 million times in a day. Very good, this kind of situation would happen more and more often in the future. But to the NPCs who saw this for the first time, it was a little too shocking. William had not only displayed his strong control as a lord, but he had also shown that he was an outstanding general. Until now, William had obtained 3 legendary status points and 1 Southeast legend point. The function of the legendary status was obviously to increase his reputation. There were also bonuses in other aspects. For example, camp reputation, the influence of the City of Dawn, and personal influence. These were all hidden, but the effects were very obvious. It could be said that, when the legendary status was spread to the entire continent, he would become the idol of bards. His name would gradually spread to everyone's ears. Until this moment, when William faced many existences, he only needed to reveal his identity, and he could easily solve many problems that ordinary people could not solve. In other words, Prince William would soon be able to show his face on the legendary continent. But first, he had to have equivalent power or influence. William's power was slightly inferior, but his background and power were considered a feudal lord in the southern region. There should not be too many people who would challenge him. This was the so-called difference between fame and power. It was very likely that he would be attacked and retaliated against. Abbreviation: jealousy will make people fall into the abyss. Let's not talk about the legendary status. My 300% mission completion has activated a Legendary Lord mission. William saw the message. He was so surprised that he could not close his legs. Other things aside, any talent that had the word legendary in it would have an extremely abnormal special effect. And this endowment also had the word Lord in it. It was as if it was tailor-made for him. Why not take a look at the attributes of this endowment? Endowment: Legendary Lord, Legendary Lord's Halo, within a radius of 1 million meters. For every 10,000 Dawn professionals, your 4-dimensional attributes will increase by 1%, up to a maximum of 20%. As a Legendary Lord, your 4-dimensional attributes will be given to every Dawn professional according to their level, up to a maximum of 5%. Halo Special Effect: the morale of your subordinates will increase by 10%. Halo Special Effect: the health points of your subordinates will increase by 300 points per second. Halo Special Effect: your subordinates will have an additional affinity for you. Halo Special Effect: attractiveness to special talents plus 3% to special effect. Fury: when your health points are less than 10%, your subordinates will increase their attack and defense by 50%, and their intelligence and pain will be reduced by 30%. They will then enter a state of fury. Duration: 1 hour or cooldown, 24 hours special effect. Sacrifice: when your health points are less than 1,000 points, your subordinates will have all their attributes increased by 30%. Their attack, defense, and movement speed will all be increased by 100%. They will also attack the enemy in a frenzy. Duration: 5 hours, cooldown, 1 month. Friendly reminder: this endowment is recognized by the Frost Empire, the Orc Empire, and the 3 Elven races. When they no longer recognize you, this mission will not be activated. Friendly reminder. If this endowment sacrifice is used more than 3 times a year, it will cause the endowment's level to decrease. Because your subordinates will think that their lord is a useless person. What the f*ck? Ever since the prince saw the talent attribute, he was completely speechless. All his attributes were increased by 110%. If he could have this attribute, all his attributes would be stacked to 130%. Coupled with the power of the Saint's Spirit, he would be invincible on the battlefield. More importantly, 5% of his 4-dimensional attributes would be distributed to other soldiers. Although it was distributed according to their level. But he had to know. How high were his attributes? Just saying it out loud was enough to scare people to death. What was this? It was the legendary Lord's Halo buff. It covered a radius of 1 million meters. But more importantly, it had Fury and Sacrifice. TSK. Actually, the two had similar meanings. They were both when he was on the verge of death or when he was about to die. The Dawn Army, no. Not only the Dawn Army, but the Dawn mercenary team would also be strengthened by the buff. Gosh, doesn't this mean that as long as I have this endowment, I can use it according to the number of players? More importantly, when the players get used to the 5% attribute bonus of my legendary Lord Aura, who the f*ck can steal the players from my hands? The prince was going crazy. This was a super endowment that was tailor-made for him. In terms of individual strength, it was definitely not comparable to the Sage. But in terms of being a Lord MMP, it was so powerful that it was insane. In the future, there would be more and more players. If William did not have a good plan, he would not be able to recruit all the players. It was like how William used the chosen ones to sacrifice themselves. If this method was used once, the NPCs would be aware of it. They would try to steal the players away. But this tactic was not very effective after it was used once. But it was fine to sacrifice themselves with equipment. The players could still cause damage. He was worried that the human empires would steal the City of Dawn. But with the legendary Lord endowment and the fact that he would bring the players along, the players would definitely be reluctant to leave the City of Dawn. They would also be reluctant to give up the 5% attribute increase. I can't take it anymore. You suddenly have such an awesome endowment. What do you want me to do? William gulped. He did not want to open the mission clue. Who knew if he would lead the Dawn Army to sacrifice themselves at the Black Great Wall? But I have no choice. This is obviously a mission with a time limit. Now that I've led the Dawn Army and achieved great results, many people have acknowledged the City of Dawn. If I give up now, I don't know when I'll be able to obtain the legendary Lord endowment again. William decided to do this for the future of the City of Dawn. For the future happiness of the players. He slowly opened the quest that had not been activated yet. Prompt: You have activated the Legendary Lord mission. Legendary Lord. As a lord recognized by the Frost Empire, the Three Elves, and the Orc Empire, your City of Dawn has developed rapidly and is very powerful. You have hundreds of thousands of elite soldiers and millions of chosen ones who are willing to sacrifice themselves. Many forces believe that you have the potential and strength to become a legendary lord. Mission Introduction. Please create an invincible and invincible super legion. Prove to your enemies and allies that you can become a true legendary lord. Mission Difficulty S+. Mission Reward Endowment Legendary Lord. Mission Time Limit 3 years. William's face darkened. What the hell? This was the condition of the mission. Wasn't this the dream that he had been working hard for ever since he had become a lord? Coincidentally? Is this a gift from the heavens? Did the goddess of luck know that I'm too handsome, so she lifted my skirt again? His Royal Highness suddenly fell into a state of worry about his gains and losses. Just as he was giggling foolishly, he suddenly raised his nimble eyebrows. That's not right. The Orc Empire has recognized me. Does that mean that the Orc Empire intends to target me? Gosh, even if it's a field battle, if the Dragonblood Legion is attacked by all kinds of groups, they will still suffer heavy losses. What do you mean by invincible? Using one legion to defeat 100 legions. That's invincible. If I'm targeted by the Orc Empire, it won't be so easy to get the invincible legion buff. William suddenly sighed. The difficulty of the mission didn't seem to be that easy. Chapter 393. 32 million merit points. It's unimaginable. When William saw the merit points, he thought about how he had risked his life to obtain a mere 20,000 merit points in the fantasy continent. Tsk. I can earn more with money. The prince sighed. He opened the merit points exchange list. It was divided into 7 categories: equipment, secret manuals, gems, medals, blueprints, treasures, and mounts. The equipment ranged from legendary quality to beginner white quality. Any type, any attribute. The 3 major elven races could produce anything that one could not think of. It was the same for gems, magical metals, and various blueprints. For example, the blueprints for airships could be found in the exchange list. But they were expensive and cost 800,000 merit points. His Royal Highness could afford it, but he already had it, and he still couldn't afford to build it. Looking at the situation of the players, even if some major guilds fought a bloody war for a few years, they would still be miles away from 800,000 merit points after accumulating all their merit points. Furthermore, the players who could participate in this mission did not have the exchange list of the elves. They had the exchange list of the City of Dawn. It was the simplified exchange list of the 3 major elven races. But even so, there were many benefits that dazzled the players. William scanned through the various exchange categories. Basically, it could be said that no matter which category it was, there were things that he liked. For example, there were legendary equipment, magical equipment, and rune equipment with special names. There were blueprints for certain top-quality gems, super rare magical metals, various equipment and magical equipment. In short, there were too many good things. William could afford most of them. It was a pity that the prince, who had received the Legendary Lord mission, had to think about how to make the Dragonblood Legion stronger. But what else can I do? All of them have epic dragon-scale equipment. The lowest bloodline is advanced, and there are a few legendary. There are a lot of epic and grandmaster bloodlines. The secret manuals are either legendary or epic. When the number of Dragonblood Legion members exceeded 3,000, the Dragonblood Legion buff was automatically formed. The Legion also had the ability to combine. But if they were targeted by the Orc Empire, no matter how powerful they would not be able to handle it. Even if they don't send their epic experts, it will be troublesome to deal with countless advanced and grandmaster orcs. The prince scratched his newly grown hair. Thump, thump, thump. A few more were broken. William threw away the few strands of hair and looked up at the sky with a heart-wrenching look. His newly grown hair had not been firm recently. Could it be that only by becoming bald could one become stronger? He couldn't possibly replace all of them with high-grade legendary sets, right? Who could afford to play this game? No matter how wealthy the City of Dawn was, the prince would have to sell his body after such a massive investment. William looked at the exchange list with a headache. He flipped through the pages. He looked through the categories one by one, trying to find a way to strengthen the army as a whole. Until, in despair, he could not help but wonder if he really had to forge more than 3,000 sets of legendary equipment. Suddenly, he was stunned by the classification of secret manuals that he did not pay much attention to. Life Chain. When William saw this skill, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Special skill, Life Chain. Exchange price: 1 million merit points, holy sh*t. He even brought out such a godly skill? The prince gasped. The prerequisite of Life Chain was Life Bond. This was a skill created by the goddess of life in the mythological era and given to the elves. In the Second Era, after the World Tree of the Elves was destroyed, the race fell into decline. But the elves did not allow the humans to take the opportunity to destroy them. It was because the major elven races did not only have a single sage. It was also because the elves had a super legion with life chain. This was the trump card of the elves. The trump card of all trump cards. The kind that could defeat the Dragonblood Legion of the human empires. It was a super legion that would rarely appear unless the elves were on the brink of extinction. In the later stages of the game, William was fortunate enough to see the legion a few times. These legions had saved the elves from extinction more than once. Furthermore, the attributes of life chain were simply unbelievable. Life bond, life chain, prerequisite. Same camp, prerequisite. Have an indestructible will, a prerequisite. Have an extremely similar bloodline inheritance, prerequisites. Have a lord, king, emperor, master that you can swear loyalty to. Skill description. The learner of this skill has to make a vow to never betray the target. From then on, the learner of this skill will share life and longevity with the target. Skill restriction. The maximum number of people who can share life chain can reach 5,000. Skill restriction. When more than 10% of the people betray the vow, everyone who has shared life chain will return to the Earth level. None cooldown. None consumption. None. William did not dare to believe it. But the truth was right in front of him. The three major elven races had placed this special skill on the exchange list. But he suddenly scratched his head. Yes, this is a civil war among the elves. Besides me, everyone else is a pure-blooded elven. Besides me, who else will exchange for this skill? Life chain was a double-edged sword. If used well, they would look down on everyone. If used poorly, the whole army would be annihilated. The prince suddenly remembered something. He remembered that in a human empire on another continent, there was a skill called lifelink, that he didn't know where it came from. That emperor had carefully selected thousands of professionals who were loyal to him and were also very strong, forming a life chain legion. It was a pity. The good times did not last long. The emperor of the human empire seemed to have become a little arrogant. He had used this legion to anger the Seraphican, who wanted to dominate the gods' continent. As a result, the Sky City fell from the sky. The huge capital of the empire was destroyed. Countless commoners, nobles, and professionals were killed or injured. However, not a single person from the human empire's super army had fallen under such a heavy attack. However, this army that had just achieved several outstanding feats was now in a completely different league. It was because of the despair of some people and their distrust of the emperor. The entire legion was reduced to ashes. Their bodies, souls, equipment, and the legion were reduced to ashes just as they were about to reach the Sky City. Although this life chain seems to be tailored for the elves, it's the same for me. William's eyebrows twitched. He was indescribably happy. The loyalty of the elves was self-evident. They were more determined than the other races in the gods' continent. But the most important thing was, the elves had not sworn to the Elven King. It was the World Tree that gave birth to the elves. The World Tree had been destroyed. But no matter what, in the hearts of the pure-blooded elves, the World Tree would always be their faith and belief. Betrayal? It did not exist. But William had heard that this skill had a limit. A camp could only have one life chain legion. The reason why the elves had split into more than 20 kingdoms was not only because of the destruction of the World Tree, but also because some first-generation elves were fighting for power. It was also because they wanted to create more life chain legions to prevent the human empires from pressuring them. Alright, this is it. William's eyes were burning with passion. He did not know if he could successfully exchange for the skill. After all, no one had expected him to obtain one. 32 million merit points in one battle. And he was eyeing this item. Chapter 394. William was pleasantly surprised and worried. He found the person in charge of the merit points exchange. It was a female snow elf who was at the Grandmaster rank. When she saw William, her eyes lit up, and she greeted him happily. "Prince William, what do you want to exchange for? Besides you, no one else has merit points. You can exchange for anything you want. There's no limit to the number of merit points." "Anything?" The prince smiled and rubbed his hands together. When the female elf saw William smile, she instantly thought of many things. Her affinity with him increased, and she said shyly, "Yes, you have won 32 million merit points. As a lord, I can recommend some good items to you. Wait a moment." William interrupted the woman who placed too much emphasis on appearance. Before she could say that she could exchange for himself, he said softly, "I'll exchange 1 million merit points for the life chain." When he said the last 4 words, the female elf was stunned. The elf girl's expression froze for a moment. Obviously, she didn't have the authority to teach him the skill life chain. As for the exchange of more than 200,000 merit points, there was a certain review and faction affinity requirement. In particular, the life chain was not something that could be exchanged for. It was created by the 3 major elven races to boost morale. For this purpose, there were many super treasures on the exchange list that were worth 1 million merit points. Some even exceeded 1 million merit points. It was purely for the sake of showing off. The elves wanted to use this war to let the low-level clansmen understand that the elves were still powerful and had a deep foundation. They had everything and were not inferior to the human empires. But they did not have the intention to exchange for the Life Chain Legion. Even if others exchanged for it, as long as they did not form their own faction, it would be useless. After all, the 3 major elven races each had a Life Chain Legion. Even if others exchanged for it, as long as they did not form their own faction, it would be useless. The Life Chain seemed like an oath. In fact, it was also a curse. In the later stages of the 10-year Blood War, some legendary and epic elves might obtain a lot of merit points in the final battle. But it was not a big deal for them to exchange for treasures that could strengthen themselves. But to exchange for such items, it would definitely arouse the suspicion of the 3 elven kings. At this moment, the female elf could only transmit the news to her superior. When the epic-ranked Big Shot received the news, he had a headache and continued reporting. When the legendary Big Shot received the news, he was helpless against the super-rich William. Hence, after Bernice saw the transmission scroll, she had to find the 2 legendary elders of the Blackleaf Elves and the Moonlight Elves. After discussing for a while, the 3 of them finally agreed to give William the Life Chain secret technique. "Your Majesty, won't there be an accident if we send out the life chain just like that?" The hand of the Snow Elf's 3rd elder that was holding the life chain scroll trembled slightly. "Don't worry. Although William is a half-elf, he has the royal bloodline of the Blackleaf Elves and the blood of the World Tree. As the first winner of this 10-year war, do I have to reject his first request?" Bernice took a sip of her wine after she finished speaking. The 3rd elder sighed. "At least from the looks of it, William has some human instincts. Based on his performance in the face of the Darkness invasion and this war, he was indeed a child who abhorred evil. His loyalty to the World Tree was unquestionable. As a lord, he has a good way to nurture the loyalty of his soldiers." But Bernice interrupted him. She knew that the old fool liked to praise before killing him. She said, "I know what you're worried about. William is young and has not even reached adulthood, but he's not stupid. Doesn't he know the consequences of teaching the secret technique to an outsider? Look at the warriors who are willing to die for him. I believe that he will choose an outstanding commander to learn this secret technique. You may leave. After you pass the life chain to him, you don't have to say too much." Bernice watched as the 3rd elder left reluctantly, but also unwillingly objected. She smiled. Was William only loyal to the World Tree and the pure-blooded elves? Obviously, it was not that simple. From his eyes, I saw not only his fear in the face of a powerful opponent. I also saw the ambition hidden in the depths of his heart. From all aspects, the Dawn Army, the City of Dawn, and the countless chosen ones that he had recruited. He had risen up step by step. What was he trying to do? Of course, it was not his ambition to harm the elves. From William's recent interactions with the three elven geniuses, he seemed to be paving the way for his future. It's not a bad thing to be ambitious. I just hope that you don't go astray. Bernice narrowed her eyes. No matter how ambitious William was, he would at most become the Blackleaf Elven King. He did not have much to do with the Snow Elves. Why? Did he want to unify the elves in the legendary continent? Even if he had this ambition, he had to be alive. That was why she decided to teach the secret technique Life Chain to William. As for the elders of the Blackleaf and Moonlight races, they were just messengers. The Great Elder of the Moonlight race and the Blackleaf Elven King were the ones who truly agreed to the decision. If William chose the wrong person from the Life Chain Legion, and someone leaked the secret, that person would definitely die if he was not at the legendary level. By then, even a true god would not be able to save him. But if William displayed his ability to be as blind as a bat, the three major elven races would completely lose confidence in him. He would not even be able to become an elven prince, let alone an elven king. Hence, after waiting for a few seconds that felt like years, William finally received a piece of good news that was both delightful and worrisome. He had obtained the scroll of Life Chain, but he could also see the importance and preciousness of the scroll from the eyes of the third elder, who did not like to speak much. But leaking the secret, TSK, you've underestimated my talent. William laughed. After thinking for a long time, he transmitted a message to Albert to come over. Albert of the Moonlight Elves was one of the few elves who was 2 meters tall. Because he was a fire element professional, and because he wanted to become stronger, he became one of the few dragon's blood warriors among the elves. He was once the Legion commander of the Moonlight Legion. After the establishment of the Dragonblood Legion, Albert became the Legion commander of the Dragonblood Legion. But in the Dragonblood Legion, there were 3 legendary bloodlines and over 100 epic bloodlines. Albert's combat power was not outstanding, but there was an advantage to being an elf. Look at him, he's tall and sturdy, but that's just a genetic mutation. They were steady, loyal, and fearless of death. If one really thought that Albert was a brute, then one would be wrong about the elves. Not long after, along with the sound of the door opening, the muscular Albert walked up to William with an arrogant gait that did not care about his own family. Your Highness, are you looking for me? Albert was one of William's trusted subordinates, and his loyalty level had reached 900+. After he bowed, he suddenly discovered that William's expression was twisted like a chrysanthemum flower. He immediately became worried. What the heck? Was William going to settle the score? MMP. What a petty man. If he had known, he would not have become a Legion commander. It was a scam. After all, he had led this super legion to attack the fortress, and 89 dragons' blood warriors had perished there. Others did not know, but he knew that the Dragonblood Legion was William's treasure. Normally, he would be heartbroken if one of them died. This time, 89 dragons' blood warriors had perished. He had a premonition that even if he did not get skinned alive, he would still have to leave. Ahem, Albert, how did I treat you? William finally asked after thinking for a long time. In the end, the 2-meter-tall man immediately knelt on the ground and cried, Your Highness, it's all my fault, it's all my fault. The Dragonblood Legion lost 89 people in battle, and it's all because of my duty. Please remove my position and let me be a guard at the gates in the future. The corners of William's mouth twitched. If Albert had not mentioned it, he would have forgotten that the Dragonblood Legion had fought well. After all, they had faced the Orc Empire's fortress. Losing 89 men in battle was considered a very small loss. The Dragonblood Legion was awesome, but William was not invincible basically, other than the Griffin Legion, who had the advantage in the air. No one had died. Which other high-leveled legion did not have thousands of casualties? But when William saw Albert's expression, he walked down from his chair with a gloomy expression. He slowly walked in front of Albert and said in a deep voice, "Raise your head, Your Highness." Albert pursed his lips and looked at William. He thought to himself, "Let's talk things through. I can't cry, but that doesn't mean I don't want to cry." William extended his hand and pulled Albert up. He continued, "The importance of the Dragonblood Legion goes without saying. I won't say much about the 89 warriors who died in battle. But I made you the Legion commander because I trust you. Now I'll give you another chance. Lead your Dragonblood Legion to take revenge for your 89 brothers. Kill 800,000 orcs. Do you have the confidence?" Albert was deep in thought. He wanted to reject this impossible mission, but he clenched his fists and nodded in agreement. Not for any other reason. It was because he was an elf, a member of the City of Dawn, and a warrior who was loyal to William. He did not know what it meant to reject a military order. "Very good." William looked into Albert's eyes and smiled. He only needed to kill 300,000 orcs to achieve the Legion buff of invincibility. Albert, who was also a Grandmaster, felt his anus tighten when he saw William's gaze. Things did not seem good. But when a scroll appeared in his hand, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. Under William's signal, Albert slowly opened it. In that second, this muscular man knelt on one knee and heavily patted his chest with his right hand. With a solemn expression, he loudly said, "I'm willing to pledge my life to Prince William Blackleaf. I'll become your most loyal believer. I'll become your sharpest sword. I'll become your vanguard. I'll never betray you. Are you my king?" William glanced at the affinity between them. He solemnly took out the thunder blade and placed it on Albert's shoulder. "I accept your loyalty. I'll be with you." Next, Albert slowly stood up. His hands trembled as he held the Chains of Life scroll. It could be said that he was a pure-blooded elf. No one knew better than him what this scroll represented. This would represent, as the Dragonblood Legion commander, he would become the strongest legion and the sharpest sword in the City of Dawn. And the Dragonblood Legion that he would lead. It would represent invincibility. Chapter 395. William borrowed an uninhabited alternate dimension. 3,300 members of the Dragonblood Legion swore an oath, and Albert personally used the scroll. In the next second, all the members of the Dragonblood Legion sensed the connection of their blood. It was as if from then on, they were like a single person. They were like twin brothers, and they could communicate telepathically. Their tacit understanding greatly increased. But these were 3,000 twins, so the effect was even better. William looked at the Dragonblood Legion members, who had 900+ loyalty points and 1,000+ loyalty points. He knew that he had succeeded. He used the remaining 320,000 achievement points to exchange for 3 legendary bloodfruit. Then he returned to the battlefield and started his plan. One of the bloodfruits was given to Albert, the commander of the Dragonblood Legion. The second one was given to Christian, the commander of the Blade Cavalry Legion. The third one was given to Julio, the commander of the Glory Legion. The 3 of them had followed William for a long time. When William obtained the bloodfruits, they did not get the chance to distribute them. But when William saw that he only had 320,000 achievement points left, he was not interested in exchanging them for other resources. It was better to let the 3 of them improve. Although becoming a legendary boss with the help of the bloodfruits did not mean that his strength was outstanding, and he could not even compare to some original legendary bosses. But when facing NPCs with epic bloodlines of the same level, he would be able to suppress them. The City of Dawn had a total of 90 legions, and most of the legion commanders had epic bloodlines. Those with legendary bloodlines did not have a fixed position in a legion. They would go wherever they were needed. For example, Burned Cinder, Diablo, Legolas, and the others. Until now, there were 18 legendary bosses in the City of Dawn. But William was the only one who had the aura of a sage and could be considered invincible among his peers. Burned Cinder, Diablo, and the little princess belonged to the second echelon. They were experts with legendary bloodlines. Little Angel Xian was a special expert. After becoming a battle angel, her light attribute had evolved and became sacred light. She had a great advantage against dark creatures, but she could not display her full strength against normal legendary bosses. As for the other legendary bloodline professions, they were relatively ordinary. Of course, no matter how ordinary a legendary boss was, they were existences that ordinary people could only look up to. His line of sight shifted to the military fortress. So far, other than the 5 fortresses that the City of Dawn had conquered, the Frost Empire was still using cannons and catapults to bombard the Orc fortresses without using magic cannons. After the War of Attrition lasted for 7 days, the Frost Empire launched its first tentative attack. The result was self-evident. They returned in defeat. The Frost Empire's losses were not heavy, but this was the reality of a real siege. Facing the Orc fortress, which had all kinds of advantages, and in a situation where the epic-ranked big shots could not appear, the Frost Empire's losses could not be considered heavy. Even a top-notch Grandmaster professional would find it difficult to take down a fortress when they encountered an enemy. In particular, they did not have 8 million chosen ones to continuously send themselves to death, reducing the intelligence of the Orc army. Therefore, the allied forces of the elves and humans were temporarily in a difficult situation. The 5 fortresses that the City of Dawn had conquered were not connected to each other. Each fortress was separated by an Orc fortress. However, to the Orc Empire, this also divided the elves' stronghold. But both sides wisely chose not to attack the Orc Empire. This was because to the north of the fortresses was the Black Great Wall, while to the south were the fortresses that the Snow Elves had built. After being tricked by William in the Orc Empire, they did not need to think about sending themselves to death anymore. If something went wrong, it would cause an unimaginable chain reaction at the front lines of many fortresses, and the final battle would be brought forward. Once again, William returned to the fortress that he had conquered. The city walls were filled with the flags of the City of Dawn. Most of the buildings inside had been renovated. All kinds of rubbish and corpses had been cleared away. The style of the buildings had also become a place that the elves liked to live in. Only the blood had been frozen, and it was difficult to wash it off. Otherwise, the human and elven soldiers would not be able to tolerate living in the smelly Orc barracks every day. This huge fortress was comparable to a small city. All the buildings were related to the military, and there were no civilians living here. At this moment, the 73,000 regular soldiers of the City of Dawn who could still fight were all stationed here. The other 4 fortresses were guarded by the elven legions. Basically, there were more than 60,000 soldiers in each fortress. Now, both sides did not intend to continue attacking the city. But since the war had already started, there was no time to be idle. Moreover, the fortresses of both sides were only used to prevent the invasion of the armies of other sides. But there were many Orcs who liked to fight. They often appeared in the north of the fortresses to show off. If they were not sending small troops to cause trouble in the Frost Forest, they would enter the northern Grand Duchy through small paths to kill the civilians. So the current battlefield was too big. But now, the players were put to good use. William divided the 8 million players into small groups and dispersed them to the 5 fortresses, the Frost Forest, and the northern Grand Duchy. In other words, the players temporarily became the main force to deal with the small Orc squads. At this moment, there were hundreds of thousands of players in the fortress of the City of Dawn. This group of people did not want to leave the army of the Dawn Army. They felt that if they followed the army, they would have more impressive missions. Go, go, go! A small Orc troop has appeared in the northeast of the fortress. Does anyone want to form a team and kill them? I'm not going. These Orc squads are deliberately showing themselves. There must be high-level orcs in charge. If we encounter them, we will die. Recently, we have been beaten to a pulp by the orcs in the north. Does anyone want to kill the dark creatures? Hey, the north gate is open. The Blade Cavalry Legion is going out again. Brothers, follow them. Once he said this, the idle and bored players suddenly became excited, and all of them rushed out. This group of players who did not want to leave the fortress, other than killing small groups of orcs, had only been carrying bricks and digging dung. They had to transform the orc fortress into a good living environment. But in order to not let themselves be too idle, the players would also form small teams to participate in various battles. It was not that these hundreds of thousands of players did not want to form a large team. But when the player army formed a large scale, the orcs would send their legions to fight. If it was a middle-level orc legion, it would be fine. The players who had the ability to revive could win. But if they encountered a high-level orc legion, they would be killed before they could call for reinforcements. Their equipment would fall to the ground. So from then on the ice field 20 kilometers away from the Black Great Wall, there were small teams of 300 players everywhere. This was because this small team of players would not attract the attention of the high-level orcs. This was because the high-level orcs' target was the regular army. Otherwise, the player army would follow behind the Dawn army. In this extreme north, besides the orcs, there were also old enemies of the players. That was the dark creatures. It was obvious. In the previous life, when the Orc Empire only had one sage, they could resist the elves for 10 years. There was a key reason why the Orc Empire and the dark creatures were cannon fodder. But in this life, the situation had changed. Besides the elves, the Orc Empire also had the Frost Empire, which wanted a share of the loot. What was more important was, the cannon fodder army of the Orc Empire had not started. The 1.8 million undead soldiers of the City of Dawn had been used first. They were also cannon fodder. The chosen ones were obviously more powerful than the dark creatures. The pressure on the Orc Empire doubled. Seeing this scene, Gyurti could not tolerate it. He immediately made the devil's dens hidden in the extreme north appear one by one. Tens of millions of dark creatures had appeared in the extreme north. Whether it was the Frost Forest or the Grand Duchy of the Northern region, they could be found everywhere. The players and the dark creatures were having a great time fighting. One could revive after death. The other had endless numbers. Noobs pecked at each other. They were very happy. When the players killed the dark creatures, not only could they gain experience, but they could also collect some special materials to exchange for battle achievements. The players were very happy. William even issued a daily mission for this. It encouraged the players to kill as many as possible. Once the SSS level mission 10 Years of Blood War was issued, the players' forum was in an uproar. The Chinese forum was not a big deal. As long as the Chinese players were not members of the City of Dawn, they could quit the camp and join the Dawn mercenary team. Then, they could rush to the extreme north and die. But the foreign players could not stand it. Why could they only do A-level missions and S-level main storyline missions, while the Chinese players had SSS-level main storyline missions in the supercontinent? In short, their tone was very sour. Many foreign players were already discussing on the forum. When the world server was launched, they had to unite and ruthlessly suppress the Chinese players. When William saw these posts, he could not help but sigh. What's the point? We're of the same root. Why rush? But then again, as the players were divided into different camps, if the players stayed in one camp for a long time, they would definitely develop a sense of glory. In other words, after the NPCs discovered the various characteristics of the players, they would brainwash them to recruit them. William had now settled the players of the legendary continent. But if he wanted to abduct the sheep of the other continents, it would not be so easy. When the 9 continents fuse, what if the players start the war first? William raised his eyebrows. In his previous life, the wars between the continents were considered peaceful. Even if there was an alliance, it was not too exaggerated. But now, he had led the Chinese players to continuously obtain benefit. Each mission was more impressive than the previous one. The foreign players could not eat the grapes, so they could only complain that the grapes were sour. Now there were envious voices, but they only said it verbally. But when the time came, what should he do to the sheep under him? It's fine if these foreign sheep don't let me fleece them. But they want to work together to bully my sheep. I can only let them see what a true legend is. William was browsing the forum. A Dragonblood Legion with the Zhan Long and Life Chain buff was ambushing the Devil's Dens. That was right. The Orc Empire had made these Devil's Dens appear in advance. This also meant that, as long as the Dragonblood Legion secretly dealt with 100 Devil's Dens, they would have a chance to obtain the Legion buff of invincibility. It had to be said. This had nothing to do with luck. It was just that William had mobilized the Chosen Ones, causing the main storyline mission to be changed in advance. This made it easier for the Dragonblood Legion. The battlefield in the extreme north had sunk into a war of attrition. Many powers in the continent had their eyes on this place. William planned to leave this place and explore a secret realm. This was the information he had obtained from the secret realm after killing the Black Dragon. Originally, he had wanted to take a look when he had the time. But for some unknown reason, the secret realm in the Nightmare Forest had appeared by itself. The time crack was getting bigger. In another 2 days, people would be able to pass through. Now, many people had gathered there. As the master of the Nightmare Forest, William had no reason to allow outsiders to enter his own secret plane. D*MN, everything in the secret realm belongs to me. It's fortunate that the situation is too tense. Otherwise, I would have led the Dragonblood Legion to kill my way back. William's eyes widened as he looked at the water mirror magic that was transmitted to him by a mage. Something's wrong. William's eyes widened. He saw a few fellows in white robes with a full moon embroidered on the back of their clothes. Wait, the reincarnation of the god of fury, Delosis, is here too? Gosh, there are other reincarnations of the god. D*MN, why are these fellows in crimson armor here? Didn't they fight with the reincarnations of the god? William really wanted to ask who had imprinted this water mirror magic. This person should be rewarded. At least 10,000 magic crystals. This was not an ordinary water mirror magic. Instead, it was a super photo of great value. But there are no professionals from the 4 major powers or the 3 empires here. William scratched his head. The situation was a little chaotic. What were these fellows trying to do? Even if it was an undiscovered primordial shrine, it wouldn't attract so many hidden forces. The fellows in white robes with the moon embroidered on the back of their clothes were not from the legendary continent. It could even be said that they were not from the gods' continent. William had once told the great elder of the Moonlight Elves. He knew that there were people living on the 3 moons. Those fellows were the people on the moons. As for Delosis and the other reincarnations of the god, they were not worth mentioning. The fellows in crimson armor were even more impressive. It was a super hidden organization that was spread all over the god's continent. It was called the Murdering God Temple. In other words, they existed for the sake of killing gods. But now they were in front of the space crack, and they had not started fighting. This was not normal. If the top powers of the continent and the 3 human empires wanted to control the reincarnations of the gods, then the members of the Murdering God Temple were unscrupulous. The fellows from the God of Fury Temple were a group of unscrupulous people. They would kill the reincarnations of the god the moment they discovered them. No matter if the reincarnations of the god were good or bad, the God of Fury Temple would not hold back. There was also a shocking conspiracy. William knew a little about it. God of Fury Temple. God of Fury Temple. No, I can't wait any longer. I'm the master of the Nightmare Forest. You bastards dare to steal from me. How dare you? Chapter 396. The secret realm of the Nightmare Forest had appeared unexpectedly, and a group of powerful people had blocked the entrance. This was akin to a fire in his backyard. His neighbor, Lao Wang, wanted to take advantage of his absence to cause trouble. William decided to return home. As for the Dragonblood Legion, he did not need to worry about the Dark Devil Den for the time being. He could not do anything about it anyway. He would do his best and leave the rest to fate. William had tried his best to strengthen the Dragonblood Legion. How far the Legion could go depended on themselves. However, it was impossible to explore the mystic territory alone. Diablo and Burned Cinder were selected. Old Leather had to learn from Old Time. Annie's combat power and luck were high, but William was afraid that she would be in danger. He did not intend to tell her about this. It was better for her to blindly follow the map and tell the Dragonblood Legion where to go. After all, apart from himself, no one knew how powerful the people who blocked the spatial rift were. Let's put it this way. How could they be weak if they could mix with the reincarnation of the gods? Most of them had methods and abilities that were comparable to William's. Logically speaking, this meant that the secret realm was extremely dangerous. But the more dangerous it was, the more William wanted to go wild. Not long after, William brought Burned Cinder and Diablo to the city of Greenlight. After obtaining the precise location, everyone headed north and flew for dozens of kilometers. Finally, in a valley filled with fog, they saw a spatial rift that could allow people to pass through. At the same time, many gazes hidden in the fog looked at William and the others who came uninvited. A figure slowly walked out of the fog. He was wearing blood-red armor. In a cold tone, he said, "Get out. Adventurer, this is not a place for you. Leave." This was also a man in a white robe. He wore a hood over his head, but he had a pair of crescent moon-like eyes that shone brightly. But his tone was much more polite than the man in the blood-red armor. "Why don't you take a look at the corpses on the ground?" Another youth laughed coldly. He was wearing a golden armor that was full of scratches from swords. It looked very simple and unadorned, as though it belonged to the mythological era. However, the person standing beside this young man was none other than Delosis. When he saw William, he opened his mouth and rolled his eyes. He was too lazy to speak. God-slaying temple, blue moon people, reincarnated gods. These trainees look quite scary, but they are all grandmasters. Are they trying to scare me in my territory? William squinted his eyes and snapped his fingers. The next second, countless sounds of rapid movement appeared at the same time. It was the time it took to open and close one's eyes. An entire army of professionals appeared in the valley. Half of them were grandmasters, and the other half were advanced. They were all Blackleaf elves. These people were William's mother's personal guards. The middle-aged elf, who seemed to be wearing ordinary clothes, slowly walked out from behind William with a straw stick in his mouth. Douglet, William's mother's ace personal guard, an epic-ranked domain warrior. When he appeared, the 3 blood armors, the alien, and the 2 reincarnators of God-slaying Palace all shut their mouths. This was because they could clearly feel the absolute oppressive aura, which could simply crush them into a pile of meat paste. In particular, all the pretentious, arrogant, and haughty feelings they had just had were instantly shattered. The words that they had just said were like feces that they had to swallow. Thin Blue. What's wrong? This is my territory. Who asked me to leave just now? William raised his nimble eyebrows and walked towards the space crack. He seemed to be saying that he was in charge of his territory. The blood armors, blue moon people, and reincarnated gods were silent. They were thinking about whether they should look for their parents. MMP. When they came out to train, someone brought troops to kill them. Was he looking down on them? At this moment, Delosis noticed William's gaze and coughed awkwardly. "Isn't this the Lord of Dawn? Long time no see." "Delosis, old friend. You're here too?" William acted as if he had seen a familiar face. He walked over and hugged Delosis. The corners of Delosis's mouth twitched. He transmitted a message to William. "Brother, I've given you a way out. If you want to enter, just enter. Don't force it. Besides us, you won't be able to open this door. You're a good friend. Shall we team up? William patted Delosis's back. I'm not interested. Very good. I'm just being polite. In the next moment, both of them separated expressionlessly. It was as if they had been acting. The others did not pay much attention to them. Delosis had no intention of introducing himself. It could not be helped. The blood armors of the godly slaying temple were their opponent. The Blue Moon people were also at odds with them. If one had to trace the history of the grudges between the three parties, one would have to go back to the mythological era to find out. Of course, this was what William deduced from the memories of the three parties in his previous life. It was in his thoughts. There were all sorts of revelations in the middle and later stages of the game. No one knew how a large number of gods had fallen. But the godly slaying temple was definitely involved. As for the Blue Moon people, they were creatures from the moon. William did not know if they had migrated from the gods' continent. But there was one thing that could be proven. The Blue Moon people had appeared in the mythological era. It could be said that, every time the eras changed, the Blue Moon people would appear. As for what they did, it had to be said, the ambition of this group of people was as big as the appetite of the dragon race. But it was unknown if they were the descendants of the goddess of misfortune. Every time there was a lot of work to be done, it would end in failure. Are you the lord of the City of Dawn, the Blackleaf Elven Prince? One of the three blood armors suddenly asked. William pricked up his ears. She was a young lady. But strangely, the people present did not have a good impression of him. There must be a problem with their aesthetics. They need to undergo a craniotomy to fix it. William thought to himself. Then he said, Yes, do you know me? I've heard of your name. Logically speaking, you should be in the extreme north. The tone of the blood armor lady was as cold as frost. She was like an assassin who had walked out of hell. Every word she said had magical power. William narrowed his eyes. My backyard is on fire. As the Lord, shouldn't I come back to take a look? The blood armor lady did not speak anymore. Instead, a Blue Moon person slowly walked in front of William. He elegantly took off his hood, revealing a face that did not belong to the intelligent creatures of the gods' continent. Their faces were similar to humans, but their pupils were curved like crescent moons, and their skin emitted a light blue glow. It was a young man with a cold expression. The corners of his mouth curled up into a smile. After bowing slightly, he said in a continent dialect that had strayed from the norm, Since you're the one who defeated the Viscount of Darkness, Prince William, you can naturally enter this world with us. But I have to tell you something. That realm warrior cannot enter. If a professional surpassing the Grandmaster level enters, it will cause a lot of trouble. It might even cause the alternate dimension to collapse. When that happens, all of us will die there. If it collapses, it's not the God realm. It's such a fancy name. It's better to call it an alternate dimension. William muttered in his heart, but he smiled and said, Thank you for the reminder. I wonder if you can introduce this so-called God realm to me? The three blood armors of the murderous temple could not be bothered with him. The alien shook his head coldly. He did not intend to say anything. The youth beside Delosis looked deeply at William. He looked at the sky arrogantly and said, It's a legacy left behind by the mythological era. Only we can open it. You're lucky to be able to enter. William did not dare to say if it was his luck. But it was definitely your misfortune. His luck was so low, yet he could easily enter this alternate dimension. How could you say that your luck was high? Actually, William had already recognized this guy. Badrit, the son of the sun god. In the light god's spirit branch. The strongest was the god of light. The Temple of Light once believed in the god of light, who was still alive. The second strongest was the sun god. He was also one of the main gods, but he had died a long time ago. Badrit was the son of the sun god. He had the blood of the main gods, but he had been sealed until now. He had the inheritance and bloodline of the sun god. He knew that he was the son of the main god. He was domineering and had an average temper. He was once chased by the experts of the Murdering God Temple. Don't ask why the Murdering God Temple did not send more powerful people to kill him. This was related to their other goal, which was to create a god. William did not wait for a reply. The space crack showed signs of collapsing. It did not expand. Instead, it continued to shrink. Looking at this scene, each of the three forces sent out a person. They cut their palms and offered their blood. They used their soul power to draw strange runes and inserted them into the space crack. As such, as the spatial crack absorbed the runes, it slowly expanded again. The expressions of the group of people who opened the door also more or less changed. The door could be opened, but what was behind it? They did not know. There were many alternate dimensions left behind by the mythological era. Many of the doors did not only lead to alternate dimensions, they would also lead to more terrifying places. They might even lead to the abyss world, which was the inner world. They could also lead to the dark world, the two transformed continents, and even the three moons. In short, everything was possible. After all, it had been a long time. The gods' continents had been torn apart. Many geographical locations had been completely transformed by the battles that had changed the heavens and earth. The opening of this door had a lot to do with the black dragon that William had killed. The Murdering God Temple was a mysterious organization that had been passed down since the mythological era. They could discover many doors that were about to be opened. After receiving the news, they had come here first. But they discovered a problem. They could not open the door by themselves. They had to find the successor of a god or the reincarnation of a god. Then, they had to work together with the Blue Moon people to cast the incantation to open the door. This was the main reason why they gathered together and did not attack. As the space crack continued to expand, it gradually became a door. The three forces chose to enter at the same time. William narrowed his eyes. When he was about to enter, Burned Cinder suddenly coughed. "Why don't we block the door and snatch the benefits when they come out?" William's mouth twitched. Why was Burned Cinder so smart? Many good things could not be snatched away. Moreover, who said that the door to enter was the same as the door to return? Stop talking nonsense. Let's go in first. William hid behind Burned Cinder and let him go first. However, the three of them entered the door. They did not feel like they had passed through a space door. It was as if they had stepped into a water curtain. But a horrifying world filled with blood fog appeared in front of them. William surveyed his surroundings. It was a familiar feeling, TSK. Wasn't this geographical location a valley with a spatial rift? The other three forces did not leave either. They seemed to be waiting for William. They did not want to kill him, but they wanted to gather their strength to survive. The prince's mouth twitched when he saw this scene. "Sure enough, I told you that your luck stat isn't high enough. Damn. The inner world. The abyss world. Even the dark creatures did not dare to provoke the abyss world. They had taken the initiative to enter. Things had gotten out of hand. Obviously, no one had expected this question. According to the method of opening the door, the danger level would not be too high. Even in the abyss world, the danger level was low, and there would be some treasures left behind. Let me introduce myself. I'm Blood Armor 9, he's Blood Armor 6, and she's Blood Armor 3. One of the Blood Armors from the Murderous Temple said as he pointed at the other two. William raised his eyebrows in surprise. That woman was Blood Armor 3? It was not easy. In the organization of the Murderous Temple, it was abnormal for a Blood Armor 3 to be Blood Armor 3. However, Delosis and Bardlet were a little unhappy. They looked at the Blood Armor trio with resentment and anger in their eyes. They seemed to be saying that the Murderous Temple was looking down on them. They had joined forces with the reincarnation of the god and the son of the Lord God, but they did not even send out Blood Armor 1 and 2? That was too much. There were also 3 people from the Blue Moon tribe. The cold-looking young man looked around cautiously. After saying something in bird language, the light on their skin quickly disappeared. It was obvious that they did not want to attract any attention. The youth slowly said, "You can call me Lanes. I'm the son of the blue moon." Once he said that, everyone turned to look at him. The son of the blue moon? There were 3 moons in the god's continent. They were the blue moon, the green moon, and the purple moon. This person was called the son of the blue moon. This meant that Lanes's identity was different. Regardless, after they came through the door disappeared from their sight. Their main goal was to take whatever they could get. If not, they had to look for another door. There were more than one door left behind during the era of the god. After all, the creatures from the abyss world, even if one was the son of the blue moon, one had to be careful in this place. Because this was a world filled with resentment, evil, curses, sins, and countless horrors. All the negative factors in the god's continent were present in this world. Hence, William decisively picked up the dream darkness rough stone and instantly transformed into a not-so-tall devil. No matter what, the abyss world was connected to the dark world. It would be easier for a devil to survive here than a half-elf. Burned Cinder and Diablo widened their eyes. The others were expressionless. They looked at William with pitiful eyes as if asking, "Brother, do you have any more?" Chapter 397. In the abyss world, there was no day. There was only night. A blood moon hung in the sky. The blurry outline of the moon emitted a faint light. The other thing was the blood mist. Inside the valley, the blood mist was so thick that even guru professionals like them could only see things 20 meters away. William squinted his eyes and activated his Eye of Thunder. He could even see up to 100 meters away. The effect was not great, but he could see further than others. He could detect danger in advance. In other words, when he encountered danger, he could survive for a few more minutes if he could run faster than others. As for the negative effects of the blood mist, he could not stop breathing, right? William glanced at the negative effects on the attribute panel. Fortunately, he would not go crazy for a few days. They came to the entrance of the valley and looked at the forest that was filled with blood mist. They looked at each other and a blood armor was about to lead the way. Delosis raised his eyebrows. He wanted to say something, but he stopped himself. Instead, he followed closely behind the blood armor. William did not make a sound and followed behind him. Just as the first blood armor walked out of the cave, a long blood-red leg descended from the sky. The first blood armor reacted quickly. He activated his battle energy shield and drew his sword. When he raised his head, he was about to dodge the attack. It was a pity. The sneak attacker was even faster. He did not hear the blood armor scream. A long red leg pierced through his mouth from head to tail. The blood armor's limbs suddenly stretched out. He was about to die. Delosis seemed to have predicted this. He drew his sword and cut off the long leg that pierced through the blood armor. Then, he grabbed the broken leg and pulled it down. A huge blood-red spider with hundreds of eyes fell to the ground. The broken leg that Delosis had grabbed turned into magma. It turned into pus and blood that dripped to the ground. But it was not an ordinary spider. It was more than 6 meters long and had dozens of legs. One broken leg was nothing. It had 3 mouths full of sharp teeth. When the strange spider was pulled down by Delosis, it flipped over and stared at them with its strange eyes. But no matter what, Blood Armor 9 could not be saved. This person's mouth had been pierced from the spider's leg to his anus. He seemed to be breathing now, but it seemed that he wouldn't be able to survive. Blood Armor 6 decisively crushed the man's brain and stored the corpse into his spatial ring. After glancing at Delosis, Blood Armor 3 transformed into a streak of bloody light and dashed toward the spider. She dodged the spiderwebs and slashed the spider monster into 2 with her sharp legs in a strange manner. Then, he slashed several more times. Only by forcibly dismembering the corpse would he be able to vent his anger. Until this moment, the 2 blood armors and Delosis looked at each other. Blood Jia 3's cold voice sounded. "You've been here before and knew that there was danger outside, so why didn't you stop him?" As the reincarnation of the god of wrath, Delosis had seen many big and small scenes. He chuckled and said, "Why should I stop him? Does it benefit me? The door we came in through must be the same as the door we left through. You want to kill each other here? Is it good for you if we all die? You're not a deity now. Without us, you won't be able to get out." Blood Jia 3's tone did not change. Even though one of his own had died, he was not angry. Instead, it was as if he was narrating a fact. Delosis slightly raised his eyebrows. He glanced at the silent Blue Moon people and the people of the City of Dawn. He nodded and said, "All right, I'll bring you out of here. But you have to listen to me." After he finished speaking, Delosis led the group out of the cave. Everyone followed his footsteps in the blood mist. He continued, "In the gods' world, the creatures of the abyss have to adapt to our rules when they come to the surface. They will become perverted monsters of various ranks. Their defense and vitality will become extremely strong. But in the abyss, we have to adapt to the rules of the abyss. We are not as strong as we were in the gods' continent. The battle energy in our bodies can only be considered a form of enhancement. Tough armor doesn't mean that we have invincible defense, but the swords in our hands have become extremely sharp. Here, only the strongest professionals can survive." Burned Cinder and Diablo looked at each other. They cursed Prince William in their hearts. William narrowed his eyes. He already knew the rules of the abyss. His health and defense did not change. But no matter who came here, the damage would become 100% true damage. He now had such a buff. All the creatures of the abyss had such a buff. Apart from a few talents that could reduce true damage, normal judgment would not work here at all. This also meant that his thick defense would lose its effect. But they were not ordinary people. They kept Delosis' words in mind. Their facial expressions did not reveal any weaknesses. And this foggy forest seemed to be the same as the nightmare forest, with trees with monstrous facial features everywhere. Or rather, the trees in the nightmare forest were originally trees of the abyss. However, the two places had overlap. For some reason, the overlapped space had disappeared. Delosis led the group to the vicinity of a bathtub. He made a wise decision to take a detour. He continued, "In the abyss, don't enter the forest and stay away from the water. There are octopuses in the bathtub and perverts in the houses. Of course, we are now in the forest. As you can see, this forest and the nightmare forest are made up of the same type of trees. This means that the overlapped space was once here. So, if we think of a way to get out, why did this door appear? Because the gatekeeper was dead? Even the things of the gatekeeper were taken away? In that case, who took it?" As soon as Delosis spoke, the three Blue Moon people fixed their gazes on Blood Armor and Blood Armor. However, Blood Armor 3 and 6 weren't nervous at all. Instead, they looked at William and the others. The prince was expressionless. However, when he realized that everyone was looking at him, he could not help but grin. "I have the item and I know where the exit is. Now we just need to head south." Delosis continued to lead the way. The others heard this. Then, he thought about the recent rumors and achievements of William. Not easy to kill. This thought rose in everyone's mind. But they were also very lucky. If William had not heard the news and followed them, it would have been easy for them to enter, but the possibility of finding the exit was infinitely close to zero. No one had the intention to snatch it. After all, they could not kill William. If they let William escape alone, it would be a pain in the ass. They had no intention of parting ways. In the Abyss world, working together was the best solution. Those who acted separately would definitely be stupid, because the more powerful they were, the more they knew that danger would come at any time. They were very confident, but that did not mean that they were ignorant and blind. In particular, no one knew what monsters they would encounter. Even though they were wary of each other, and were not considered friends in the gods' continent, it was inevitable for them to feel like they were from the same hometown in the abyss world. Now, no one could leave each other. Delosis was most familiar with the abyss world. The blood and runes of blood armor and the blue moon people were the key to opening the door. William knew the location of the door. Now they could only continue walking. Time passed very quickly. Delosis's familiarity with the abyss world was far beyond everyone's imagination. William even thought that without the negative buff of the blood mist erosion, Delosis would be like a fish in water. He would have an easier time than many abyss creatures. They walked along the way. They encountered many monsters that were fighting with each other. Delosis led the group to detour around them. Devouring each other. This was the reason why the abyss creatures lived. This was one of the reasons why there were not many monsters in the nightmare forest. William was in charge of pointing the way, while Delosis was in charge of leading the way. They did not know how long they had walked until they found the entrance to a dilapidated city in the forest. There were 4 crooked words on the city gate. Dark City, it was obvious. After the appearance of space folding, the gods' world would not only copy things from the abyss world. It was the same the other way around. The pitch-black steel gate was wide open, and there were many scratches on the gate. The entire dilapidated city was shrouded in a blood mist. Sharp, ear-piercing screams could be heard from within the city. All sorts of strange auras sent chills down their spines. It was as if they were warning them not to enter the city. If there were no accidents, this city had become the home of the abyss creatures. No one knew how many monsters there were inside. Or rather, the abyss creatures in the forest were attracted by the sudden appearance of the city. Delosis and the rest looked at William in confusion. "Were you telling me that this is the exit of the door? Are you kidding me?" There were so many abyss creatures inside. Even if everyone present was a grandmaster, they would not be able to obtain any benefit. William glanced at the item in his hand. Then he looked at the mission. He felt a headache. He was not a stranger. He was a player. He had received the mission after entering the city. Invasion of the Abyss World. When the Guardian of the Door dies and the space crack reopens, the 2 worlds will overlap. Mission Introduction. Kill the strongest abyss creature in the dark city of the Abyss World and find the method to close the space crack in its stomach. Mission Time Limit. 48 hours. Mission Difficulty. S+. Mission Reward. 500,000 to 1,500,000 experience points. Mission Reward. Endowment Heart of Justice. Mission Failure Penalty. The space overlap will immediately occur. It's not that I want to accept this mission, but my green light city is in the nightmare forest. The corners of William's mouth twitched. The exit of the door was in the Black Dragon's lair. He had 2 choices. 1. Complete the mission. 2. Leave the door now. But it would cause a chain reaction, and the space overlap would immediately occur. It was equivalent to abandoning all the civilians and professionals living in the Green Light City. He had thought of asking the sages for help, but he understood after looking at the abyss creatures in the Dark City. Even if the space overlap took time, the moment they left the door, before he could ask the Blackleaf Elves for help, the abyss creatures would more or less appear in the Green Light City. It was equivalent to giving up his territory. I only have 4 cities. You want me to give up one of them? How is that possible? The prince put on a kind face. He looked at the others and said in a sincere tone, "Yes, the door is inside, but we'd better be careful. Try not to cause too much trouble when we open the door." The others looked at William's handsome face, and for some reason, they felt that William was lying to them. But William had already taken the lead, and the others had to follow. When he glanced at the mission information, he suddenly understood something. The stomach of the strongest abyss creature hid a method or treasure to resolve the space overlap. In that case, could he say? It was an abyss creature that had lived here a long time ago. If there was really something hidden in its body, it must be an extremely powerful treasure. After all, the stomach acid of the abyss creatures was extraordinary. William glanced at the others who had not refused. Obviously, they seemed to know the characteristics of the abyss creatures. They even knew more about the abyss creatures than William did. But after thinking about it, the door could only be opened by these three parties. In other words, in the mythological era, their ancestors had come here to do something or left something behind. Hundreds of years ago, the space overlap in the Nightmare Forest had unexpectedly occurred. Did it mean that there had been a space crack at that time? But the three parties had come to find the treasures left behind. They had even dragged on for too long. Instead, the space overlap had occurred. In the end, they temporarily resolved the problem of the space overlap. But there was still a black dragon who became the door guard. Now, the Dark City had become the gathering place of the abyss creatures. They seemed to be reluctant to enter. But this group of experts, who had their own thoughts, chose to listen to William's command? Wasn't it too strange? Along the way, Delosis had been avoiding the abyss creatures. He tried his best not to fight. The blood armor warriors of the murderous temple were hot-tempered, but they were expressionless. Ever since the Blue Moon warriors arrived, they had not spoken much. They seemed to be very obedient. But was it really that simple? What was their conspiracy? Could it be that they really didn't know where the exit was? Delosis had killed a blood armor because of a disagreement. He did not care about the lives of others. Blood Armor 3 had told them the way to leave the door. It required the cooperation of the three parties to leave. It seemed to be meant for Delosis, but perhaps it was meant for William. He wanted William to understand that he could not leave them easily. Even if he found the door, he could not leave. Actually, it was possible that the way to leave the door was not that troublesome. William thought about many things. He seemed to have obtained the treasures left behind by the Black Dragon, and he was the guide. But he might be the most ignorant one, because this group of B***stards had hidden themselves too well. When they entered the dark city that was filled with blood mist, it was as though they had entered the stomach of a huge monster. Many dilapidated ruins, clock towers, and buildings appeared in front of them. However, a terrifying feeling appeared in his heart. It was as though those dilapidated buildings were like huge monsters. The abyss creatures seemed to have fused with the buildings. The broken doors and windows were like the abyss creatures' eyes and mouth. It was as though countless eyes were staring at them. But William discovered it. The people beside him were much more excited than him, it was obvious. They were more eager to enter the dangerous city than William. They were afraid William did not dare to enter the city. "Damn, are you going to use me as cannon fodder?" William swallowed his saliva. He glanced at the scheming people and said, "Sure, I want to see how good your luck is." Chapter 398. For some unknown reason, after they entered the city shrouded in the blood fog, the world seemed to have quietened down. The abyss monsters in the city seemed to have discovered their arrival. All of them became quiet, and the ear-piercing screams disappeared. The blood fog in the city was not dense, but it still prevented them from seeing the buildings on both sides of the street. Some vague outlines looked like the huge mouths of man-eating monsters. Hence, they only dared to walk on the wide street. They did not dare to wander around. William surveyed his surroundings and then looked at the others. They were the ones who did not know much about the abyss world. Although he was a player and had become a legendary, he had not played the game to the later stages. He had been to the moon and the dark world, but he had never been to the abyss world. Come to think of it, the dark world and the abyss world are connected. Am I considered to have entered the palace for the second time? William thought and felt more confident. After all, combat power was the true ability. As long as he was careful, it would be difficult for this group of people to trick him. Crack! It was the sound of the wall peeling. A faintly discernible figure flashed before everyone's eyes. It was like a human thief who was afraid of being discovered. This scene. William and the others saw it. It was a pity. The 2 blood armor warriors of the godly Slayer Temple did not move. The 3 blue moon warriors were calm. Delosis and Bardlet were expressionless as well. They were not distracted by the figure at all. No one spoke. Not a single person paid any attention to that so-called figure. They continued to walk forward quietly, as though they had their own objectives. They were not timid people. Since they had come, they had to be careful. Since they were here, they did not intend to walk out quietly. There were countless abyss monsters in the city. Even if a normal person entered the abyss world by mistake, he would not be able to survive. If there was no accident, that figure was something that the abyssal monster had used to attract them. Were the abyss monsters trying to make some of them rush out impulsively or nervously? Would they slowly disintegrate their team? William only wanted to say, "What a joke. Even if we split up, we are the ones who initiated it." He suddenly raised his eyebrows. He felt as though he had stepped on something soft and bouncy. It felt like meat. Gulp. Someone suddenly swallowed his saliva. William lowered his head and looked down. He inhaled a breath of cold air. Abyssal monsters. This was a street that was more than 100 meters wide. When they walked, they didn't lower their heads, so they stepped on it. What replaced this 100-meter-long crack was something black. It was unknown whether it was the back of the monster or a tentacle. As William did not see the monster's face, his insight was filled with question marks. He could not tell what kind of monster it was. However, no one dared to act rashly. Delosis used his psyche telepathy to say, "Slow down. Don't release your battle energy. We'll be fine. Try not to wake it up." Subsequently, everyone continued to slowly walk on its body and slowly left. No one made any strange movements. No one released their battle chi. They were true God-level teammates, but they were also God-level enemies. It would be too difficult for a useless teammate to join their team. Only when they were dozens of meters away from the monster did they heave a sigh of relief. However, they were careful enough, but it didn't mean that the monster didn't wake up. No one noticed a tentacle on the ground, silently coming up behind them. Swoosh. The tentacle suddenly attacked. Its target was the sun of the blue moon. The tip of the tentacle wasn't densely packed with suction cup. Instead, there were countless tiny and sharp black thorns. It was as though the thorns were going to pierce into a person's body and suck the person dry. When the huge tentacle was in front of Bluesea, he turned around. He conjured a talisman and slammed it. A palm print transformed into a half-moon and collided with the tentacle like a huge mountain. Poof, poof, poof. It was like a heavy hammer smashing on a piece of rotten meat. The half-moon glowed and crushed the tentacle that was tens of meters long. The tentacle exploded on the back of the monster that was about to get up. Bang! The bluish-white battle energy formed a huge shockwave that swept across a radius of 1,000 meters. The blood fog was dispersed, and the bloody mud was blown everywhere. But the monster wasn't killed by the explosion. It was a huge tentacle monster. After it howled in pain, hundreds of black tentacles engulfed the area. At the same time, all sorts of strange screams could be heard from every corner of the city. The atmosphere of the entire city suddenly changed. Tall buildings collapsed one after another, and grotesquely shaped creatures of darkness walked out of the blood mist one after another. William cursed. He led Burned Cinder and the rest to run forward. "Follow me." The others were not slow either. Bluesea squinted his eyes. No one noticed that there were a few bloody holes on his arm. The flesh around the wound was turning black. Fresh blood was flowing out. Bluesea took out a few glowing blue gems and plugged the wound while no one was paying attention. Then, he continued to run with the rest. All of them had a target. Their target was also within the city. It was in the stomachs of those monsters. Someone had come here hundreds of years ago. But the nightmare forest was too big. There were so many monsters. It was too difficult to find and kill them. Therefore, those people deliberately delayed time so that the two spaces of the two worlds would overlap. They knew the habits of the abyss creatures. They liked to gather in huge buildings. This would cause the monsters to devour each other and create bigger monsters. There was no better way than this. The Dark City had not been invaded by too many abyss creatures. The overlapping spaces did not last for long before they were sealed off. They hoped that after hundreds of years, the monsters would gather and kill them. But the teleportation portal was opened in advance. They did not know where the previous batch of people had gone. As a result, when the blood armor of the murderous temple discovered this place, he did not know what was going on. But as they had inheritances, they knew that there must be something good inside. Therefore, they used their own methods to contact the Grandmaster professionals of the other two parties. They worked together to open the portal and conspire for the treasures inside. After all, as the saying goes, there are no eternal enemies, only eternal interests. The three parties were opponents, but there were many times when they worked together. In fact, the so-called epic professionals could not enter the portal was pure nonsense. As for letting William enter, it was because he had no choice but to do so in front of the epic professionals. Initially, they did not know that the place behind the portal was the Abyss world. But when they saw so many abyss creatures gathered in the Dark City, and they knew that hundreds of years ago, there was a history of overlapping spaces, they understood that the senior was working for free to help the monsters gather together. He must be planning something. As for what treasures were hidden in the bodies of the monsters, they would have to rely on their sixth sense. Because the teleportation portal was opened by the blood and runes of the three parties, there must be treasures left behind by the three parties. As long as they got close, they would be able to sense it. Therefore, while the crowd was running, two blood armor of the murderous temple left the team. They suddenly turned around and rushed towards a tall and damaged clock tower. Their target was the huge abyss monster inside. It looked huge and had a threatening aura. But they did not hesitate. They had to finish the battle quickly. They had to kill the monster and steal the treasures before escaping. They could not delay. Because in the Abyss world, there were no ranks. But there were big and small ones. In this world, the bigger the monster, the more powerful it was. Most of these monsters only used brute force. But in many cases, brute force was enough to kill people. William continued to lead Burned Cinder and the rest as they charged forward. He had a palace in the Dark City. That was the City Lord's mansion. No one knew the direction of that location better than him. The Blue Moon Warriors suddenly changed directions and left the team. Only William, Burned Cinder, and Delosis were left. At this moment, the closer they got to the City Lord's mansion, the thicker the blood mist, the narrower the path. It was as though they were rushing from a sunny path to a narrow and winding path. It made them feel uneasy. In particular, the surrounding monsters were also struggling to leave the buildings they were in. Various tentacles attacked them from time to time. If the five of them did not have good combat awareness, they would have been dragged into the darkness if they were not careful. Because when faced with the abyss monsters that only used brute force, once they were entangled, it would be difficult for them to break free from the incredible confinement. After all, they are not the Japanese tentacle monsters in history. The tentacle monsters here kill people. William sighed. He suddenly braked and looked at the City Lord's mansion, which had changed shape. It had to be said. In the entire Dark City, the City Lord's mansion was the largest building complex. But he glanced at the surrounding abyss monsters that did not come out to challenge him. It was obvious that the monsters in the City Lord's mansion were the strongest. What was even more surprising was that Delosis and Burned Cinder stopped in their tracks and looked at the City Lord's mansion. One thing? Or are there two different things in that monster's body? William did not have time to think. Delosis said in a deep voice, "We want the item left behind by the gods." "What do you want?" "A treasure that prevents the overlapping of space," William replied. Bartlett raised his eyebrows and said, "One thing. Let's kill it first before we fight for it." "Okay." William nodded. In front of an expert of the same level, he would not have any other thoughts. Even if he had any, he would hide them in his heart and wait for the fatal blow. In the next second, the 5 of them rushed to the city lord's mansion. In the next second, the 5 of them flew back at an even faster speed. They even rushed into the sky with all their might. It was as though they were competing to see who was faster. Because the moment they flew over the high wall, they discovered that tens of thousands of blood-red eyes opened at the same time and stared at them. That kind of numbing feeling almost made them scream in fright. There was a huge abyss monster in the city lord's mansion. It was like a pile of rotten meat that was spread all over the city lord's mansion. The monster could not fly. It did not even have tentacles. But just that huge body alone was enough to make people feel an infinite chill. It was as though they were facing an epic expert. They did not dare to move recklessly. And in the sky, thousands of meters away, Delosis swallowed his saliva and rubbed his hands awkwardly. "Did you bring the forbidden spells?" William raised his eyebrows and did not say anything. "Okay, I have a wind and a fire forbidden spell scroll." Delosis did not want to delay any further. "I have a light and a fire magic scroll," Bartlett said in a deep voice. "2 ice magic scrolls," William replied. Delosis narrowed his eyes and said, "Ice and fire. I'll go first." The god of wrath threw down a fire elemental archmage's forbidden spell without saying a single word. Boom! Countless flames soared into the sky. The intense heat made them feel uncomfortable even though they were thousands of meters in the sky. The entire city lord's mansion was instantly turned into a sea of fire. The already dilapidated city lord's mansion melted into pieces. Blood mist spread continuously. Everyone discovered that the body of the black monster, which was thousands of meters in size, was charred and blistered. Tens of thousands of eyes popped and exploded. Screech, screech, screech. A huge mouth that was hundreds of meters wide opened at the center of the monster's body. The ear-piercing screams pierced through their souls. Diablo almost spat out a mouthful of blood. But he pretended that he was fine and swallowed the blood into his stomach. It was a weakness. It must never be exposed to the enemy. But when the monster opened its mouth, everyone saw countless thin and long tentacles in the monster's mouth. They seemed to have magical powers and were as hard as metal, but they were very flexible. If they had not escaped quickly, they would have become feces. William did not dare to hold back. He immediately threw out 1,000 miles of ice forbidden spell scroll. Of course, this boast was a little too loud. It was difficult for an enchanter to use the 1,000 miles of ice spell. Furthermore, the forbidden spell scroll could only unleash a small portion of the enchanter's power. It depended on the enchanter's skill level. A high-level forbidden spell scroll could only unleash half of the power of the enchanter's forbidden spell. But the moment the scroll broke apart, a terrifying aura burst forth. An unimaginable chill surged in their hearts. Subsequently, as the scroll broke, the frost spread at a speed visible to the naked eye. It spread to a radius of 1,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 100,000 meters, and even the entire city. It was a product of Moses. It was definitely a high-quality product. Delosis glanced at William. He did not expect William to have such a high-quality scroll. He could not help but say in his heart, "What a waste." The corners of Bartlett's lips curled up. He was reluctant to use such a forbidden spell scroll. His father, the Lord of the Gods, had left him many treasures. But this forbidden spell scroll had 80% of the power of an ice enchanter. It was the best of the best. And it was obvious. The surface of the huge monster was instantly covered in frost. It looked as if it had been completely frozen. But no one dared to go down. The son of the sun god, Bartlett, used a light element scroll. Swoosh! The instant the scroll broke, William and the others could not help but squint their eyes. It was a light pillar that had a diameter of a few hundred meters. It appeared from the dark sky out of nowhere. It was like a holy light sword that stabbed into the surface of the monster's body. Pom, pom, pom. The frozen flesh on the surface of the monster exploded. The monster's body seemed to have been corroded, and it kept melting. It was hit by 3 forbidden spells in a row. When the last light element scroll smashed down, the monster twitched its body and stopped moving as if it was dead. But it was a pity. The monster that pretended to be dead did not know how the rich took risks. The 4th scroll appeared, the monster endured. It did not move. The 5th scroll was coming. It could not take it any more. It began to bare its fangs and brandish its claws. But it could not fly hence. When the 6th scroll was about to be thrown down, the monster suddenly opened its mouth and spat out something. In his heart, he was still thinking, "If it weren't for your quick reflexes, I would have eaten you up long ago. Now get out of my sight. Don't continue to annoy me." It had to say. After taking 5 forbidden spells, it was about to die. It was infuriating. Everyone stared at the item in front of them. Chapter 399. Everyone saw the treasure at the same time. But William did not forget to cast an ice-forbidden skill on the ground. No matter what, the big guy in front of him was already on the verge of death. It was only a forbidden skill scroll. What if he could get some sort of reward? Delosis ignored the huge abyss monster. He was thousands of meters in the sky. The monster could not fly, so even if it stretched out its tentacles, it would not be able to hit him. Delosis did not have the ability to kill monsters to gain experience points. He focused all his attention on the item that the monster had spat out. The treasure that had been spat out by the monster. It was not something else. It was a scepter that was more than 1 meter long. Delosis and Bartlett could clearly sense that it was a relic from the mythological era. It had not been damaged, so it must be extraordinary. When the item was thrown into the sky, Delosis and Bartlett unleashed their maximum power. Boundless flames and a beam of light bloomed in the center of the 5 of them. A huge shockwave instantly spread hundreds of meters away. They attempted to repel William and his companions. However, Burned Cinder and Diablo activated their battle energy shield. Like berserkers, they endured the damage and stood in front of William and his companions. Meanwhile, each of them held a dozen forbidden skill scrolls in their hands. A dozen scrolls. When the scrolls were taken out of the space rings, intense magical fluctuations appeared in the sky. Burned Cinder and Diablo were covered in blood. But if the 2 of them dared to move, they would crush the scrolls. Stop! 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 Delosis could sense that some of the scrolls were on the verge of breaking with his eyes and ears. Intense magical waves were sputtering out continuously. He was so frightened that he roared on the spot. "Wangdefa, please slow down. Both of you are geniuses with great potential. You don't have to die for William. What's wrong with living well?" Bartlett swallowed his saliva in fear. He did not understand Burned Cinder and Diablo, or rather, he was envious of them. He was the son of God, but he did not have any top-notch experts of the same level who would pledge their loyalty to him. Could it be that he was not handsome enough? Moreover, there were dozens of forbidden skill scrolls. If you crush this bunch of scrolls, everyone will die, okay? We are gods, children of God. You want us to die together with you? Have you asked if we are willing? In particular, do you think this thing is cabbage? You can just take out a few to scare people. Why take out dozens of them? Who are you flaunting your wealth to? What was this situation called? The 2 of them, who thought that they were nobles, would naturally cower in front of 2 desperados with C4 bombs. After William withstood a wave of their ultimate attacks, he held his scepter in his hand. He waved it gently, but he felt that it was not very convenient. He turned his head to look at the unhappy expressions of the 2 and smiled. "It's a pleasure working with you." Delosis's face darkened. "Happy my ass. Such a huge monster only had one thing hidden in its stomach. Didn't I come here for nothing?" He also discovered a problem. William's trump cards were more plentiful than he had imagined. His 2 subordinates were also geniuses with extremely strong combat strength, but they were willing to die for him. This was the most difficult thing to deal with. A lord with high combat strength was not afraid of anything. The key was that many people would die for him, including those who were not weak in the entire continent. This kind of ability was very abnormal. Moreover, he had dozens of forbidden magic scrolls at the level of an enchanter. Not to mention the huge monsters of the abyss world. Even the epic experts of the gods' continent could be killed by the explosion. However, an epic rank expert would definitely not be as passive as the abyssal monsters. The moment the domain was released, a Grandmaster rank professional would basically have no way to resist. Damn, you have so many scrolls, but you made us waste 2 scrolls each. Delosis felt sad. One of them was a reincarnated god. The other was the son of a god. In terms of the number of forbidden magic scrolls, they were inferior to a neutral lord, but the scepter was already in William's hands. Even if the 2 of them were angry, there was no need to fall out. Snatching items depended on one's capabilities. They did not dare to bet their lives with William's subordinates, so they admitted defeat. It was that simple. According to the previous situation, if William had used the forbidden magic scrolls to stop them, they would not have hesitated. They believed that William would not perish together with them. But if it was a lord's subordinate, the 2 of them thought that they were of high status, so they did not want to risk their lives. William saw that the 2 of them did not want to fight, so he did not intend to kill them. Not to mention that they did not need to open the teleportation portal. The 2 of them were really afraid of death. But they should not forget that they were related to the gods. In many cases they would definitely have a trump card, but the price was not small. If they did not have a treasure that was worth the price, they would definitely not use their trump card. Since they had given up on the scepter, it meant that the scepter was not a good item to them. They did not have much time left. When William killed the monster, he was shocked. All the abyss creatures in the dark city went crazy. It was like a kingdom that had lost its king. All the monsters were fighting for the throne. Some of the monsters that were closest to the city lord's palace twisted their bodies and started to devour the giant monster's body in an attempt to become stronger. The monsters in the nightmare forest seemed to have realized that their master had died. Many flying monsters rushed over with the sound of breaking through the air, trying to get a share of the spoils in this chaotic battle. They looked at each other and flew towards the black dragon's lair without hesitation. As for whether the other 2 teams could find what they wanted, it would depend on them. Meanwhile, William glanced at the information panel. Prompt: You have killed an abyss monster that is more than 1,000 meters long and caused 40% damage. Prompt: Rewarded 300,000 experience points. Prompt: Rewarded random lucky draw x2 random lucky draws? Come to think of it, what is this scepter? William curiously picked up the white scepter. Space Scepter Royal Power Quality. Legendary Position Level. None Creator. God of Space Production Materials. Space Crystals, Space Fragments, Space Dragon Bones, etc. Attack Power. 1600-3500 Power, plus 100 Physical Strength, plus 100 Agility, plus 80 Intelligence, plus 160 Weight. 3. 8 kg Durability. 6800 Usage Requirement. Not lower than the Grandmaster level, 1000 points of intelligence usage restriction. The scepter will automatically adapt to your level. The attributes and attack power will increase according to your level. Space Seal, Royal Power. Temporarily seal the space within a radius of 10,000 meters and turn it into your battlefield. No one can escape from this space. Lasts for 5 minutes. Cooldown, 1 hour space jump, Royal Power. Launch a space jump in any direction within a distance of 0 to 100,000 meters. You can stay in the space tunnel for up to 30 seconds. Cooldown, 3 minutes. Space Shock, Royal Power. Cause a space shock within a radius of 3,000 meters and cause 8,000 plus. Intelligence X 300%. Magic damage to the enemy. Cooldown, 3 hours. Space Lord, Royal Power, say all the space magic that you can think of. Within a certain range, the Space Scepter will cast the magic for you. Cooldown, 10 days. Other skills? Description: this equipment was casually created by the god of space. But why did his servant leave it in the abyss world? D***MN. William was bewildered. This is the legacy left behind by the god. Do you have to be so crazy strong? They're all strategic skills. They're so awesome, you know? The prince gulped. That's the legacy left behind by the gods. Especially the last skill. Space Lord, Royal Power William did not want to say anything else. He could only sigh. It was indeed something casually created by the god of space. 2 words. That was the end of it. William glanced at the flying monsters that were charging at him. He could not help but want to try it out. That was right. He was an outstanding legendary boss. With the enhancement of his bloodline, his intelligence had reached 1,000 points. He could use it, but if he upgraded the magic staff, the usage limit would become 2,000 points. He would not be able to use it then, but now was the right time. Everyone saw him holding the white magic staff and waving it behind him. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Space vibrated. An indescribable spatial fluctuation swept across a radius of 3,000 meters in an instant. Blood mists exploded from the bodies of thousands of flying monsters. This was the slightest space vibration that would cause damage to most parts of their bodies. Then, they fell from the sky with crackling sound. There were all sorts of ear-piercing screams. It was very miserable. But because the space vibration was like a space shock wave, it could not deal a fatal blow to the abyss creatures. Furthermore, his intelligence was not high enough, but as long as the monsters fell, it would relieve a lot of pressure. Badrit raised his eyebrows. It was a good item. Why did he give it up? Delosis seemed to have heard his telepathic thought. He replied, "It's good, but it's not a divine weapon. We don't have to waste our trump cards to fight for it." Badrit was deep in thought. "You're right. My father did not leave me too much of the Lord God's blood." Delosis felt a little sour when he heard this. As a reincarnated god, he was not as rich as the son of a Lord God. But this was the main reason why he wanted to bring Badrit along. If the two of them were to encounter any troublesome opponents, Badrit might hide the Lord God's blood that he did not reveal. That would be like beating the opponent up. Furthermore, both of them had their own schemes. Although Bardlet seemed a little silly and arrogant, it was still not easy to trick him. There was no choice. He was the son of a Lord God. His luck points were full at this moment. A few figures dashed out from behind them. 2 blood-stained Blue Moon warriors. 2 blood armor warriors from the Godslayer Temple. It was obvious. The enemies they faced were not as strong as the 5 of them. But they were richer than the 5 of them. In this battle with Pay-to-Win, one of the Blue Moon people had died. But judging from their expressions, they should have obtained a good harvest. While William and his companions were rushing towards the Black Dragon's lair, they suddenly felt that things were getting out of hand. The door to return seemed to be in the underground space, but inside the pitch-black cave, there seemed to be many difficult enemies hidden there. Chapter 400. The entrance to the Black Dragon's lair was hidden in a valley, and the teleportation portal was a few hundred meters underground. "It's very dangerous down there. Should we barge in?" William glanced at the people around him. If they really wanted to barge into that pitch-black and dangerous underground cave, who knew how many monsters there were in such a huge underground space? It would be too reckless. "All of you are powerful. Think of an idea." The 3 blood armors seemed to understand what he was thinking, but they still said in a cold voice, "There are only 2 options. Stay here and wait for more abyss creatures to rush over. Otherwise, kill your way in, find the teleportation portal, and leave immediately." William silently gave them a thumbs up. The blood armors of the murderous temple were very powerful. They had crawled out from a pile of corpses. They seemed to have no emotions and did not know fear. They only knew how to fight. It was no wonder that the blood armors 1 to 9 were constantly changing. Lan Zhe, who was wearing a white mage robe, heard this. He looked at the 2 blood armors and coughed. It's not safe without someone to scout the path. But it'll be troublesome if anyone dies in the last part of the journey. Leave it to me. Lan Zhe, aren't you a mage? Are you sure you want to scout the path? You should leave it to the warriors. Bartlett laughed. Logically, scouting the path should not only be left to the warriors, but also to the weaklings. Cannon fodder? They would be seeking death. As he spoke, he glanced at Burned Cinder and Diablo. William was expressionless when he saw Bartlett's gaze. He knew that Bartlett was a little angry that his item had been stolen. He also knew what Bartlett was thinking. There were only 2 people left in the 3 factions, and only the City of Dawn had 3 people. It would be better for them if they could kill one of them. But the Son of the Blue Moon smiled and said, "That's not necessary. Leave it to me." As he chanted an incantation, a strange rune appeared in his palm. Moonlight appeared. The moonlight rune in his palm was like a teleportation portal, or something strange. Suddenly, his palm was filled with hundreds of moonlight imps that were a few centimeters tall. They nimbly jumped to the ground, and many of them tumbled. But they immediately got up and cleverly patted the dust off their bodies. Then, they bowed to Lan Zhe. Then, the group of moonlight imps chattered as they transformed into light spots and disappeared into the pitch-black cave. Badrat pointed at the little moonlight figures curiously. Lan Zhe didn't hide anything. In front of everyone, he turned everything that the little people saw into a blue screen of light. There were hundreds of shaky holographic screens. In the eyes of those little people, it wasn't too dark. In fact, it could even be said to be very bright. Burned Cinder and Diablo's eyes were filled with curiosity. They admired the scenery as if they were Granny Lou looking at the Grandview Garden. The cave was no different from before. But as his field of vision widened, the original Black Dragon lair had changed greatly. The underground space had already become a bathtub. The bubbling black water was very turbid, and it was impossible to see what was underneath. Only the palace was still on dry ground. Up until now, they hadn't even seen a single abyssal creature. Bluesea frowned. His hands kept flicking out runes, and the moonlight imps were about to enter the bath and the palace. But it was a pity. The palace and the bathtub were filled with threats. When the hundreds of moonlight imps entered, their bodies quickly melted. But the speed at which they disappeared varied. That meant that there were fewer threats in some places. But that was enough. Bluesea also heaved a sigh of relief. "Everyone, follow me. Those little fellows who are scouting the way have found a pretty good route. As long as we are quiet and careful enough, we shouldn't provoke the monsters below the bathtub." The others nodded in surprise. If they could avoid fighting, they would try to avoid it. If they caused trouble and fought with groups of abyssal creatures, they wouldn't have any advantage. Then, everyone followed Bluesea into the cave. It was hundreds of meters deep. They didn't walk. They all flew slowly at a low altitude, using the least amount of battle energy to prevent the abyssal creatures from hearing anything unusual. When they arrived at the huge underground space, they saw the bathtub under their feet that kept bubbling. They all frowned at the same time. There were simply too many monsters below. They were densely packed. They were still in a state of deep sleep. But they didn't know what would happen after a while. But with Bluesea leading the way, the others chose to follow. Soon, they were halfway there. If he really wanted to trick them, it wouldn't be that easy. Everyone more or less had some trump cards. But no one noticed that black gas suddenly came out of Bluesea's magic glove. His crescent eyes, which should have been emitting blue light, instantly turned dark red. William led Burned Cinder and the other 2 to the back. He used his soul to scan the surroundings for threat. Suddenly, he saw Bluesea's body in a strange state. The others did the same. But it was too late. When the Son of the Blue Moon turned around, a narrow beam of moonlight swept past. The head of the youth behind him flew into the distance and fell into the bathtub in disbelief. Blue Sea, on the other hand, opened his pitch-black eyes and smiled evilly. You want to leave? At that moment, in the bathtub that had a radius of tens of thousands of meters, thousands of huge bathtub squids emerged. Everyone didn't know what was going on, but when they saw the tentacles, they couldn't help but fly higher into the sky. They flew past Blue Sea and headed straight for the palace. But they were in action. Blood Armor Six's eyes also turned black. He held a long crimson sword tightly and slashed at Blood Armor 3. It was a pity. Blood Armor 3's reaction speed was even faster, and he evaded the saber projection in midair before slashing it back in retaliation with a saber projection of his own. Blood Armor 3 was knocked into the bathtub by the sword energy, but he wasn't attacked by the squids. Instead, he sneered and shouted, "It's a pity that this body isn't strong enough. You didn't obtain the treasure." Blood Armor 3 glanced at the long crimson sword in William's hand. It was the treasure that they obtained from the bathtub. Blucia's new blue gloves were also one of the treasures left behind by the people of the Blue Moon. But when Burned Cinder, Diablo, Delosis, and the others looked at William, lightning flashed and thunder roared from his left hand of the god. The space staff in his hand emitted black smoke, along with the screams of despair. It completely disappeared. Nothing was left behind. His Royal Highness gulped. He had suddenly felt a strong sense of threat. But before the squid could enter his left hand, he turned into dust. Blue Sea and Blood Armor 6 were enraged when they saw this. They charged at William like madmen. Damn it. He's the son of the god of space. He looks like the son of an idiot. He can't even do something as simple as possessing a body. He woke up so many years early for nothing. Kill that half-elf and take back his spatial staff. Blue Sea took a deep breath. His palms turned into thousands of shadows. Blue runes bloomed in midair and transformed into various blue moon magic spells that bombarded William. But at this moment, no one chose to leave. Instead, they fought with the two of them and the tentacle monster at their feet. When Delosis heard the words God of Space, he understood what it meant. But the most important thing now was to end the battle quickly. It was not the time to explain. He immediately shouted, "We have to capture Blue Sea and get rid of the creature in his body. If not, all the people of the Blue Moon will die. We won't be able to escape." William was being chased by Blue Sea. He did not know if Blue Sea had been possessed by the creature. Blue Sea's attacks were fatal. When William heard Delosis, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. He said, "Leave Blue Sea to me. I don't like this ugly creature. Get rid of Blood Armor 6 and the tentacle monster." "What are you going to do?" Everyone did not understand William's words. They discovered that the Lord of the City of Dawn and Blue Sea had disappeared from this space. When the rest saw this, they immediately surrounded the possessed Blood Armor 6. Blood Armor 6 was dumbfounded. Although the tentacle monster did not attack him, it did not have a good impression of him. If he entered the bathtub, the abyss aura that he had stored for so many years would be depleted sooner or later. Then, he would die. His original plan was for the three of them to successfully possess Blue Sea and escape. But now, a group of super geniuses had surrounded him. He shouted, "How dare you! I'm swoosh." Blood Armor 3 returned another blow to shut him up. Then he sneered and said, "The old man who disappeared a few hundred years ago? Your name has been erased from the god-slaying temple. It doesn't matter if you die now." "Attack as I please?" Burned Cinder asked eagerly. "Attack as you please. Charge. How dare you? Io, stop hitting me. Don't hit my face. I admit defeat. I'll leave." "Can't I leave?" William's gaze landed on him. This was his space blockade. There were only two of them on the battlefield. When the Grandmaster Blue Sea saw this, he wanted to laugh. It was as if he was saying, "Are you stupid? How dare you challenge me in a space with a radius of 10,000 meters?" In the end, as William used his space magic staff, the space continued to shrink and shrink. until the battlefield with a radius of 10,000 meters became a narrow secret room. At this moment, God's mentality gradually changed. Blucia's face darkened. He wanted to break through the surrounding space, but it was useless. Instead, his magic was reflected back at him. He said in a deep voice, "You can't save this guy's body. I'm from the Blue Moon. I can help you open a teleportation portal and return to the gods' continent." William approached him step by step. Blucy saw that William was not attacking, so he kept retreating. Even when he could no longer retreat, he still chose not to attack. He decided to delay as long as he could. After all, he knew that this space could only last for a short period of time. But William continued to approach him. Then, he stretched out his left hand of the Thunder God and propped himself against the space wall. His face was almost touching Blucia's face. Then, William laughed at Blucy. "Hand over the glove and I'll let you off. Anyway, I'm not familiar with Blucy." "Really? Why would I lie to you? You've seen it. The gods, murderous temple, and Blue Moon should be here. But I'm a half-elf. I followed them in." Palm. The left hand of the Thunder God emitted dazzling lightning as he punched the space wall. William shouted fiercely, "Hand over the glove or I'll kill you." The counterfeit Blucy swallowed his saliva, feeling wronged. "Were you a berserker half-elf?" But he hesitated for a while before handing over the glove. The time was almost up. Magic robe. Blucy took it off. Magic shoes. Blucy continued to take it off. He handed over his magic clothing, leaving only his underwear that emitted blue moonlight. William raised his eyebrows and looked at Blucia's underwear. Blucy secretly glanced at William's lustful and greedy eyes. "Wait a minute. Do you want my equipment, or do you want to f***ck me? Brother, tell me clearly. Although this body belongs to me temporarily, I'm not interested in it. Not taking it off?" William grasped the left hand of the Thunder God and released the aura of the Thunder God. "Take it off, take it off, take it off, that's right." William kept the legendary equipment into his space ring. Then, he glanced at Blucy, who was squatting in the corner. Blucy was just a pitiful, trembling fellow. But he did not say anything. Regardless of whether he was a close combat mage or not, he was still a mage. Even the most powerful close combat mage could only scream when he was cornered by a warrior. "Turn around and bend down." "Gosh, you're bullying me, Palm. Palm, 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 palm. Stop hitting me, stop hitting me." "Hit you? That's just a waste of energy. Feel the soul skill." I'll turn around and bend down, okay?" "It's too late. I'm not interested anymore. Let's use Soul Shockwave."